suggesting very much that Boris Johnson will win. By how much? Much more debatable. But of course, that might mean putting forward his Brexit deal. Britain might leave the EU by January the 31st, and then, still don't forget, there is a trade deal to develop.
Exactly, and the question becomes how quickly we get the repricing in the markets once, or if we get that Conservative majority, how quickly does the market start thinking towards the rest of 2020 and perhaps fade some of the strength in the pound. 2 minutes into the equity market open, we're absolutely dead flat on the stock 600. This after gains of more than 1% on Friday. Looking across regional equity benchmarks, it's really a little bit of a muted picture. The FTSE 100 off by 0.1%. The CAC 40 is flat. The IBEX and FTSE MIB also open pretty much flat, just waiting for the DAX to get going. It looks like it could be more in the green than some of the other indices, but we'll wait to get a full reading on that. In terms of US futures, so after a 0.9% gain on the S&P 500 Friday, after that blockbuster jobs number, we trade flat on Dow, S&P and NASDAQ futures right now. So equities really not giving us a lot of direction. We don't have a huge amount of news flow really to drive them either way today. We did see some green on the screen in the Asian session, on a headline level, but of course some weakness in certain areas after that China trade data caused some concern. The CSI 300, for example, being in the red. Taking a look at the bond market, the 10-year Treasury yield climbed, but not that significantly on Friday following the jobs data. But we are above 180, 183 handle. We slip a basis point in today's session. We also slip a basis point on the 10-year bund yield, -30. The 10-year gilt yield down a basis point too on a 76 handle. In terms of FX, looking at the Bloomberg dollar index, we're pretty much unchanged. We underperform on some of the commodity currencies. The Aussie dollar, the worst performer, and that could just be a read-through from that China trade data. The Kiwi also weaker. The pound, meanwhile, up 0.2%. So we have seen some pound strength in today's session, which is not a surprise given the polls over the weekend that did show that clear Conservative majority. So we trade at 131.67. And then oil, of course, we did see quite a big reaction on Friday to that surprise output cut from the Saudis. Decline a little bit today. WTI down 0.5%. Brent crude down 0.3%. WTI rose 7% last week, trading at 58.92. Brent at 64.17. Roger.
Okay, let's have a look at what the stocks are to watch this morning. Bloomberg's Sam Unstead has joined us in our London studio. So, Sam, first of all, Tesco. They're going to sell Thailand, or considering, let's say, selling Thailand and Malaysia units, could raise them $9 billion.
Yeah, that's the initial valuation that's been thrown out there for these. I mean, if that were to be the case, this would give them an enormous amount of firepower, both to look into their UK business, reposition it if they need to. Bear in mind the UK supermarket space is extremely competitive, especially on price. So eking out margins there is very difficult. If they can pump more money into that, reposition themselves, they may be able to get a bit of a lead. So overall, it seems to be taken very, very well for Tesco. They're up 4% this morning. But as you said, they are only considering it. So let's see what happens.
Indeed. Now, big pharma, big move. France's Sanofi is moving into the growing lucrative field of cancer drugs. They're going to buy Synthorx for $2.5 billion.
Yeah, and actually it's interesting. This deal does not seem to have been taken particularly well. Sanofi's shares are about unchanged this morning. This is the major area for most drug makers, and Sanofi are very aggressively moving into the cancer space. And the deal they've done this morning is at a more than 100% premium. So they're paying a pretty significant amount of money to buy Synthorx. And it looks as though analysts, certainly this morning, saying they may be overpaying just a little bit in order to get into that space.
And the takeaway market, or rather the delivery market in terms of food and your dinner, Process has raised its offer for Just Eat once again.
Yes, takeover battle that will not end for Just Eat. They're in the process of merging with Takeaway.com. Process is trying to outdo that offer. The interesting thing about this, Process have raised their offer to 740 pence. The Takeaway deal values Just Eat at 710 pence. But Just Eat shares are currently trading at 780 pence. So I think the market thinks there's quite a way to go yet.
All right, thanks very much indeed for that. Sam Unstead there with stocks to watch this morning.
Let's turn to our top stories then, and we start in China, where the latest export data shows US tariffs are hurting its economy at a time when global demand is already weak. Bloomberg's Selena Wang reports from Beijing.
Total exports in November dropped 1.1% from a year ago, and to the U.S. they were down 23%. That's the worst result for exports to the U.S. since February, and the 12th straight monthly decline. Overall shipments were expected to rise almost 1% as retailers and companies stock up before the Christmas shopping season. About 18 months of tit-for-tat tariffs have clearly damaged both economies, with Chinese companies and American farmers selling less to the other sides. In Beijing, I'm Selena Wang, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
What's interesting, though, is that imports from the US gained for the first time since August 2018. So that's obviously the other side of the coin. And according to some economists, the rebound in imports, Roger, shows there is a short-term stabilization in the Chinese economy. But of course, some of that rise is due to a 2.7% increase in imports from the US, which might be linked to increased goodwill purchases of American farm products ahead of a deal.
And, of course, progress in the trade talks with the US would be positive for external trade, but it's not clear yet whether the two sides can get a phase one deal over the line. President Trump says he isn't ready to sign anything, and the White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow said Friday the two sides are haggling over the amount of US farm products that Beijing's willing to purchase. Speaking to Bloomberg, Kudlow said Trump thinks the talks are moving forward, but the final strokes are not there.
He thinks the talks are moving ahead very nicely. He likes that they're very constructive, but he's not ready yet to sign, or he hasn't seen everything he wants to see. So we're moving forward nicely, covering a lot of ground, and I've learned never to forecast the outcome, and ultimately it is President Trump's going to make the final call, as you know.
But hanging over this, of course, is the latest round of American tariffs, which are set to kick in on December the 15th.
And according to Goldman Sachs, if a phase one trade deal is reached, Treasury 10-year yields will probably climb toward 2%. But the bank says further upside beyond that will probably be limited.
Staying with China, Beijing's told state offices and public institutions to remove foreign computer gear and software within 3 years. That's according to the Financial Times. The move is part of a broader plan to reduce China's reliance on foreign tech and boost its domestic industry. The goal is to substitute 30% of the equipment next year, 50% in 2021 and 20% in 2022.
And just to give a tiny bit more context on that Goldman call, Roger, what they say is that while risks ahead are substantial, their base case remains for a phase one agreement that includes a reduction in existing tariffs and avoids those due to take effect on December 15th. But to other stories, back to the US. Remember all the mayhem in the repo market back in September when overnight liquidity dried up and lending rates suddenly skyrocketed? Well, a new report out from the Bank of International Settlements is blaming hedge funds and large banks for the disruption. More from Bloomberg's Denise Pellegrini.
The BIS says big banks and hedge funds are responsible for the September disruption, and it says the big four U.S. banks most active in the market hold more liquid assets in treasuries now relative to what they park at the Fed, and that makes them, the BIS says, less nimble than they used to be. On top of that, the BIS says hedge funds are increasingly using the repo market to finance investments, putting additional strain on liquidity. The Fed has since stepped in to calm things down in the U.S., but the BIS says Europe's €8 trillion repo market is becoming increasingly fragmented, and it says that raises the risk that Europe could be next. Denise Pellegrini, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Turning to the Middle East, oil traded near the highest level in almost 12 weeks on Friday. That's after Saudi Arabia surprised the market with a significant supply cut beyond what was agreed with fellow OPEC Plus members. Saudi agreed to reduce its official output target by 400,000 barrels a day, and that brings the total supply cut implemented by OPEC and its allies to 2.1 million barrels a day. But there has been a headline for one big oil company, Tullow Oil. They've had a very bad morning all over. Their shares are now plunged 43% as the production was below their views, and indeed the CEO has quit.
Yeah, and also Goldman have boosted their 2020 Brent crude forecast to $63 a barrel from $60 a barrel. And this is after, of course, what we've just talked about, OPEC Plus pledging to take aim at the market's short-term physical imbalances, seen as sort of adopting a strategy employed by the cartel decades earlier, the 1990s strategy. So this is Jeff Curry and Damien Corvalin writing this note, changing their call, saying the crude market is expected to be tighter in the first half of 2020 as OPEC and its allies focus on correcting prompt supply rather than perceived long-term imbalances through open-ended commitments.
OK, back here in the UK, of course, it's the last week of the election campaign, kicking off with both main party leaders playing to their core supporters. Boris Johnson emphasising getting Brexit done, Jeremy Corbyn stoking concerns about the future of the health service. And in terms of the predicted result, 3 weeks of debate have barely moved the dial. Bloomberg Westminster's Sebastian Salek has the preview.
The latest polls are still showing a Johnson win, and despite doubts about the ability of pollsters to get it right, he's likely to wake up on Friday still in Downing Street. The debate hasn't really shifted in 3 weeks either, with doubts about the ability to do a free trade deal with Europe in less than 12 months failing to change public opinion, while the Prime Minister's suggestion at the weekend of a post-Brexit baby boom has met general derision. Meanwhile, Jeremy Corbyn's anti-Semitism problem has not gone away, even as his message about vulnerability of the NHS has hit home. In the end, a bad weather forecast for Thursday may be the biggest factor that could change the outcome. In London, I'm Sebastian Sarlik, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Those are your top stories. For the latest in global news, here's Bloomberg's Sandra Kilhoff. And Sandra, you have more on this developing story on the volcano in New Zealand.
Yes, good morning, Naira. One person has died and a number of people are injured and missing after a volcano erupted on New Zealand's White Island. Nobody lives there, but groups of tourists visit it regularly. Here's the country's Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern.
We believe around 100 people were on or around the island at the time, and some of those at this stage are unaccounted for. A number of people are reportedly injured and are being transported to shore.
Hundreds of thousands of people joined Hong Kong's biggest demonstration in months yesterday. Bloomberg's Ian Marlowe says it's a sign that popular unrest will continue into the new year.
The protesters have sought to keep the pressure on the government with a combination of peaceful mass marches, like the one on Sunday afternoon, and more violent actions like shutting down transport networks and vandalizing mainland-linked businesses. Protester calls to disrupt the Monday commute and workday, however, hadn't materialized as of late morning. In Hong Kong, Ian Marlowe, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
France faces another day of disruption today as transport and other public sector workers continue to strike. Bloomberg's James Regan has the latest on the protests against President Macron's pensions reform.
A second major day of demonstrations is planned across the country on Tuesday, with polls showing the movement still has majority support among French people. Prime Minister Edouard Philippe is expected to lay out the details of the government's proposals on Wednesday this week. In Paris, James Regan, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And Finland's Transport Minister Sanna Marin has been selected to lead the Social Democratic Party. Aged 34, it makes her the country's youngest Prime Minister ever. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sandra Kilhoff. This is Bloomberg. Stay tuned.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Inovalon is a leading provider of cloud-based platforms empowering data-driven healthcare. Leveraging deep connectivity, the data of billions of medical events, and advanced analytics, Inovalon empowers the achievement of improved clinical outcomes and financial performance for thousands of health insurance companies, hospitals, doctors, pharmacies, and pharmaceutical companies, and the millions of patients they serve every day. Inovalon. Data has a story to tell. We give it a voice. Learn more at Inovalon.com.
My name is Hunter Hayes. I know myself, and I know my buzzed warning signs. One shot is about knowing my limits, or not necessarily knowing my limits.
I start with one shot to have a good time.
One of the signs that I'm starting to feel a little buzz is when I start solving not only my own problems, but the entire world's problems. When I know I'm going out, I know I'm going to start with calling for a ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Paul Allen.
One of the world's largest sporting retailers has just opened a fifth store in Australia and is planning to expand across the country and beyond. Joining us now, we have Decathlon Australia CEO Olivier Robinet. 5 stores in Australia now. You obviously see some potential in this market.
Yeah, sure. Aussies are the most sporty people of the world. So for Decathlon, it's a huge opportunity.
Retail spending in Australia is down. There's evidence that the tax cuts, rate cuts are not being spent. People are opting to save. Is that your experience? Have you noticed a downturn in retail spending?
It's not easy, but I think it's an opportunity for Decathlon. Here, horses are really sporty, but sporting goods are really expensive. And our aim is to make sports more accessible to more horses. So Decathlon work a lot on just to innovate. And just have an example, for example, of this mask designed by our teammates. And this is a very innovative mask, as you can breathe underwater by your nose and just breathe relax with a 180 degrees view. So millions of people in the world went under the water thanks to Decathlon and to this mask. And perhaps we should have used it last week in Sydney also.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters in London, I'm Roger Hearing. Time for a Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Over to First Word breaking news desk in Berlin. Today's morning call. Here's Richard Jones. Richard, good morning.
Been modest ahead of the week.
We don't have Richard there. Up to date on what's going on, because at the moment we're 15 minutes into the European opening, and Stock 600 is down 1/10 of 1%, FTSE 100 down 0.2 of 1%, CAC down 1/4 of 1%, DAX down 1/10 of 1%. Definitely a risk-off mood there, it seems, in Europe at the moment. Looking ahead to US futures, actually S&P, Dow and Nasdaq all very little move, the futures at the moment there, despite the S&P 500 having a very good day on Friday, the result of those US jobs figures. Looking across to oil, of course, we are talking a lot about oil this morning, given what's happening with the Saudis talking about restricting their outputs. Currently WTI $58.88 the barrel, that's down 1/2 of 1%. Brent crude down 0.4 of 1%, 64.15. And also in the light, of course, of the British election coming up on Thursday, keeping an eye on cable, not moving a lot at the moment, 1.3169. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Sandra Killoff with more on what's going on around the world. Sandra.
Good morning, Roger. Indian lawmakers are set to approve legislation to prevent Muslim migrants from winning citizenship. It's the latest move in Narendra Modi's hardline Hindu nationalist program. The proposals allow citizenship for Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists and others who arrived illegally from neighbouring countries, but Muslims are excluded. The leaders of Russia and Ukraine will hold their first face-to-face talks today in an attempt to tackle 5.5 years of conflict in East Ukraine. More than 13,000 people have died in fighting between government forces and rebels backed by Russia. Now there is hope of a breakthrough after Ukraine withdrew from 3 areas and accepted a series of conditions. President Volodymyr Zelensky will join Russia's Vladimir Putin in Paris, along with the leaders of France and Germany. And the world's largest private collection of whiskey is expected to fetch up to £8 million at auction, made up of almost 4,000 bottles, including one dating back to 1926. It is the world's largest collection by both value and volume. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sandra Kilhoff. This is Bloomberg. Naira.
Sandra, thank you so much. Do we know who's purchased this?
It's a former PepsiCo magnate who used to fly from Colorado to Scotland routinely just to get the best bottles out of distilleries and auctions there.
No, he's made a very nice collection. I've had a look at some.
Jealous, Roger. I know you're a whiskey lover.
I'm not bidding. Unless you want to have a whip round. I mean, we can raise 8 million, could we?
Yeah. Nice Christmas present for you and the family, yes. Sandra Kilhoff with the World News. Thank you so much. Now, the deadline for more tariffs to be imposed on Chinese goods by the US is looming, and the latest Chinese export data released over the weekend demonstrates the impact of the tit-for-tat tariff battle that it's having. Exports to the US fell by 23% in November, and overall exports posted a surprise fall. Joining us from our Hong Kong studio, Bloomberg Chief Asia Economics Correspondent Enda Curran. Enda, great to have you with us. So the take on this from Bloomberg Economics is that the weakness is probably not over, going by the contractionary reading on new export orders in the latest PMI data. But we did see a rebound in imports. So what's the overall takeaway? I've heard a lot this morning that this is going to put pressure on China to want to do a deal. Is this one data point going to do that?
Well, you are right, because politically important as well, by the way, imports increase from the US, and that, of course, will give some solace to the trade hawks in Washington. But I think the big takeaway here is that exports were expected to increase in the month. And remember, this is key shipping season when merchandise goods are being shipped across to the US and around the world in time for the Christmas holiday shopping season. And in fact, as you outlined there, they fell. It was the worst result for exports to the US since February, and the 12th straight monthly decline. And I think there's a feeling that perhaps they haven't hit the bottom yet, because remember, it's not just a trade war story that's going on here. We are seeing exports being impacted by the global slowdown as well. So much depends on where these trade talks do actually pan out. But right here, right now, I think all the indications are China's export sector remains under pressure.
And is there an expectation, Enda, that the December 15th tariffs won't go through? Because that certainly seems to be what the market's thinking. But, I mean, there's no sign, and Larry Kudlow certainly wasn't pushing very hard in that direction.
Yeah, it's difficult to say, Roger. We aren't getting very definitive signals from either side now at the moment, I have to say. And I think the commentary coming from Beijing and Washington over the coming days will now really be crucial as to whether or not this deal does go ahead. Remember, we've had this kind of push-pull effect on the trade story. We've had positive signals from China in terms of taking measures to improve IP and promising to buy more US farm goods, and we've had some signals from the US that they're willing to come to the table perhaps and negotiate on some of China's red lines. But of course, the broader backdrop to US-China relations continues to deteriorate. We've had stinging criticism from China over the US involvement in Hong Kong and Xinjiang, for example. So I think right now, as I said, we don't have any strong direction from either government as to whether or not we will get that final trade agreement this week, but I would say the coming days will be crucial for that.
Yeah, and, there's a couple of nice pieces on the Bloomberg today, Enda, just talking about the limits of central bank policy and the growing threat of Japanification all around the world. And, of course, if the trade war escalates or get worse, I guess that becomes even more of a risk. We've also had car sales data from China today, car sales continuing their decline in November. The piece that you've written is about quantitative failure when it comes to central banks. But the PBOC, as it itself has pointed out, is one of the central banks that does still have room in terms of conventional monetary policy.
No, you're right. I mean, one of the reasons that we all care about a trade war is because it's applying a lot of downward pressure on the world economy, and there isn't much space for the authorities in these governments around the world to respond. But like you mentioned, China, with the central bank there, they do have conventional space. They can cut interest rates lower if they need to. And of course, they haven't gone into the world of quantitative easing just yet. But the narrative coming from China remains that they're trying to pursue something of a disciplined approach. They don't want to go on a big borrowing binge again. They're trying to get a grip on the level of debt in the economy. And the central bank is trying to be somewhat disciplined also. And what we've seen instead is more measures on the supply side. They've pushed through tax cuts to try and help small and medium-sized businesses there, and they are, of course, putting money into small and medium-sized businesses in terms of taking steps to promote lending among banks to get that side of the economy going. But the big question there is, how long can they keep up that discipline? They've got a very important economic policy meeting this month, which will dictate policy for the year ahead, and it will dictate how much stimulus they roll out.
All right, Enda, thanks so much. Enda Curran there, Bloomberg's chief Asia economics correspondent. Coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, you remember the repo mayhem back in September? The BIS blames it all on a structural issue fueled by big banks and hedge funds. We'll dig into that next here on Daybreak Europe. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Santa arrived on Wall Street Friday with a sleigh full of buy orders after the government's November jobs report beat expectations. We'll find out today if the rally will continue. Trade will be back in focus less than a week before threatened U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports are due to take effect. Michael Collins at PGIM doesn't think that will happen.
I don't even think Scrooge would impose new tariffs 10 days before Christmas, right? So it's hard to believe if that happens, it is going to be a really ugly end of the year.
Wall Street's major averages are little changed from where they were 1 week ago, thanks to Friday's big rally. Investors will see lots of economic news this week. The Fed's interest rate decision is due Wednesday, and the government will have reports on wholesale and retail inflation, as well as November retail sales. T-Mobile will be in federal court today, defending its planned takeover of Sprint against a challenge by several states. Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
The market's in focus every business day. The P&L Podcast with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
Are there some sectors that you want to have more or less exposure to?
What's behind this engine of gains?
Analysis of the day's Wall Street action.
The U.S. market looks relatively safe.
From Bloomberg Intelligence, Bloomberg Opinion, and influential newsmakers.
Ward McCarthy joins us right now.
P&L with Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz. Listen today on Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
In today's volatile markets, investors need resilient portfolios to help handle the pressure. Through decades of expansions and recessions and changing interest rates, clients have turned to PIMCO to help them stay on course, no matter what course markets take. PIMCO, active fixed income solutions that aim to give investors an edge. All investments contain risk and may lose value. Investing in the bond market is subject to risks. Consult your investment professional prior to making an investment.
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can fill your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery is running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We heart in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited. Like for reals. None of this, we're so unlimited. But you can't watch your fave Christmas film endlessly. Or dead scroll inspo for tree decorations until 4 in the morning. We wouldn't do that to you.
We have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Ho, ho, ho.
Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data.
At Lidl, we're big on the sweetest Christmas and those happily ever afters. Like our winter warmer deluxe mince pie strudel at just $2.99 and our deluxe espresso martini roulade for only $4.99. Big on a Christmas you can believe in. Now that's big on quality and always Lidl on price. Subject to availability, selected stores excludes an eye.
Forget the cheese, basket, and socks this holiday season and get the ones you love and even the ones you just kind of like. A subscription to TuneIn Premium. With TuneIn Premium, you'll be giving them the gift they can enjoy all year long. Featuring live NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB games, commercial-free music, and even podcasts. TuneIn Premium brings the best in audio to you. This year, we're making Santa's job a whole lot easier. So forget the stocking. Stuff their phone with TuneIn Premium. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB digital radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
8:30 a.m. in London, 9:30 if you're listening in Paris, Frankfurt or Brussels. Good morning, everyone. I'm Naira Chahich.
And I'm Roger Hearing, and you're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
30 minutes into the equity market open, we drift on the Stock 600, trading unchanged. Taking a look at regional equity benchmarks, the FTSE 100 is flat. The CAC 40 edges into the red, down 0.2%. The DAX goes nowhere, along with the IBEX and FTSE MIB. This after we saw gains of more than 1% for the Stock 600 on Friday. And of course, US equities posted strong gains, 0.9% higher higher on the S&P 500 on Friday following the blockbuster jobs report. We drift on futures in the US today as well. Not a lot of news flow to really push them either way. Dow, S&P and NASDAQ futures trading flat. It is, of course, a big week in terms of central bank decisions from the Fed and the ECB, and we look ahead to the December 15th tariff deadline on the weekend as well. The 10-year Treasury yield moved higher on Friday following the jobs report. We slip 1.5 basis points today on a 182 handle. 10-year bund yield down 1.5 basis points, negative 30. The 10-year gilt yield also down 2 basis points on a 75 handle. So there is a slight bias to risk off across assets today, but nothing too strong, even though we got that export data from China coming in worse than expected. And that has punished the Aussie and the Kiwi a little bit. They're the worst performing G10 currencies today. The Aussie dollar and the Kiwi dollar down 0.2%. The pound, meanwhile, trading to the upside, up 0.2%. If we look at cable, following some polls over the weekend showing the Conservatives on track for a majority and on track to win the election on Thursday in the UK. Cable trading 131.66, up 0.2%. And taking a look at oil, WTI gained 7% last week. We saw a jump on Friday following the surprise output curbs from the Saudis. Goldman has adjusted its Brent forecast for 2020 to $63 a barrel from 60. Brent trading at 64.13, fading those gains a little bit from Friday, down 0.4%. WTI down 0.6%, trading at 58.86.
Now, let's move on to some of today's top stories. US tariffs are hurting China at a time when global demand's already weak. Bloomberg Daybreak anchor Brian Curtis has more from Hong Kong.
Total exports in November dropped 1.1% from a year ago. Shipments to the United States plunged 23%. It was the worst result for exports to America since February and the 12th straight monthly decline. Overall, shipments had been expected to rise 0.8% ahead of Christmas. These 18 months of tit-for-tat tariffs have damaged both economies. Chinese companies and American farmers are selling less to the other side. In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Here in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson goes into the final days of the election campaign focused on his key message. Johnson maintains that only he can deliver Brexit. Polls show the Conservative Party on track to win a majority. Johnson will urge his supporters not to be complacent about Thursday's election.
In top corporate news, Tesco says it's considering selling its operations in Thailand and Malaysia. It's carrying out a strategic review of its global business after receiving what it called inbound interest. Tesco Thailand is the biggest hypermarket chain in the country, with almost 2,000 stores. The operations are reported to be worth as much as $9 billion.
And the mayhem in the US repo market in September wasn't just a temporary hiccup. That's according to new analysis from the Bank for International Settlements. The market was upended in part because the big US banks now hold more of their liquid assets in treasuries relative to what they park at the Fed. The BIS warns this structural problem reduces their ability to supply funding at short notice.
Well, let's pick up on this story because we're welcoming Bloomberg Markets reporter Danny Berger here in the studio. So, Danny, let's pick up. There's a lot of plumbing in the economic system to deal with here, but the BIS says the cause behind the structural problems in the repo market is what exactly?
Yeah, I love it. Market plumbing, I feel like people rarely think about it until it's a problem. But as this BIS report points out, this is a huge structural problem. So to answer the question, it has two parts. One is the market really is just relying on 4 big U.S. banks for the funding. But the issue is that those banks, more of their liquid assets, the cash that they put into the repo market, is increasingly moving into treasuries. So that's one issue. That's the supply side. And then on the demand side, you have hedge funds who are more and more using the repo market for their leveraged daily trading. So you have a very vast mismatch where you have hedge funds trying to dip into the market, but these banks, again, very concentrated, mostly just 4 of them, don't have that liquidity that they can offer. And we've seen this problem arise in September, and the BIS saying this is not a temporary hiccup, and it's especially troubling in December when there is seasonal illiquidity already.
Yeah, and we look ahead to the Fed meeting this week, Danny. No doubt this is going to come up again at the Fed meeting, as it has in every one since we had these market wobbles. So where are we with the Fed's role in all of this?
So as I said, the Fed in September, they first stepped in, have been providing some liquidity in terms of the market. But the Fed, they acknowledge that this is an issue. They've said it for some time. But we've heard different groups urge the Fed to do more. Perhaps we'll hear some of this. The Independent Dealer and Trader Association, for example, this month said that the Fed, they need to increase their amount of reserves in the system. And they've said that they need a repo facility that's accessible to more than just primary dealers. So there have been calls for this. It's been looked at the Treasury Department, the SEC. So everyone is waiting to see if the Fed heeds these calls and does more than a temporary fix.
Well, what do you think are the chances of that? I mean, is this going to be taken seriously?
I think it has to be taken seriously. The consequences of not doing something about the repo market, again, even though it sounds like a boring topic, they're pretty vast. You could get the situation where, let's say, a primary dealer can't access the liquidity they need, and if they go bankrupt, if they have to, if they can't fulfill some of the what the repo market might have solved for them, you have people on the other side who hold treasuries as collateral. So then they'll start to sell those treasuries, and we could get a fire sale across markets. So I think with that in mind, the Fed is very aware that this is a serious issue and that changes need to happen.
Danny Berger, our Bloomberg Markets reporter, with all the details on the repo market. And just a disclaimer that none of us find this or you boring, Danny. Thank you so much.
Yes, I find it complicated, I think is the answer. Right, let's get the latest in global news. Here's Bloomberg's Sandra Kilhoff, and you've got more on the volcanic eruption in New Zealand.
Yes, good morning, Roger. At least one person has died after a volcano erupted on New Zealand's White Island. A number of others are missing, with around 50 tourists believed to have been in the area at the time. Deputy Police Commissioner John Timms says there are likely to be further fatalities.
At this stage, it is too dangerous for police and rescue services to go to the island. The island is currently covered in ash and volcanic material. We are taking expert advice with regards to the safety of any rescue attempt.
Hundreds of thousands of people joined Hong Kong's biggest demonstration in months in a sign that popular unrest will continue into the new year. Protest organisers say 800,000 people marched through the city on Sunday, while police put the number at around 180,000. The rally was the first promoted by the Civil Human Rights Front to win an official permit since August. The leaders of France, Germany, Russia and Ukraine meet in Paris today in a bid to secure the peace process in Crimea. Bloomberg's Caroline Connan has the preview.
This is actually the first time that Putin will shake hands with Zelensky, a former comedian who's been elected president of Ukraine in May of this year. But another issue could overshadow the summit. Over the weekend, French newspaper Le Monde unveiled new elements about the alleged Russian election meddling in the last French presidential elections. In Paris, Caroline Connan, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And Germany's Social Democrats have formulated new demands for staying in the governing coalition. But as Bloomberg's Birgit Jennen explains, the CDU is showing little appetite to go along with the changes.
CDU General Secretary Paul Ziemiak rejected calls to give up the balanced budget for more spending, saying infrastructure investment should be increased by easing regulatory hurdles. The new SPD leadership wants to start talks soon. In Berlin, Birgit Jennen, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sandra Kilhoff. This is Bloomberg. Roger.
Right, let's get the sport now. Here's William Esler.
Celtic won a 10th successive domestic trophy yesterday as they defended the Scottish League Cup. Despite being second best for much of the match, they beat Old Firm rivals Rangers 1-0. After the game, manager Neil Lennon admitted they had goalkeeper Fraser Forster to thank for the win. Leicester cut Liverpool's lead at the top of the Premier League to 8 points. They eased to a 4-1 victory at Aston Villa yesterday and are now 6 points clear of third place Manchester City. Wolves are now on their best top-flight run for 57 years. A 2-2 draw at Brighton extended their unbeaten run to 11 games. Sheffield United came from behind to win 2-1 at Norwich, with Newcastle doing the same against Southampton. West Brom are back on top of the Championship. They thrashed Swansea 5-1 at the Hawthorns yesterday. The result means they're 2 points clear of Leeds. And Exeter's perfect start to Rugby Union's European Champions Cup continued yesterday. They survived a second-half fight back from Sale to win 22-20. Elsewhere, Gloucester got their first victory in Pool 5, beating Connacht 26-17.
That was William Esler with all the latest sport. And coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, Peter Dixon, Global Equities Economist at Commerzbank, will be joining us here in the studio.
Yeah, he's joining us at the start of a week brimming with potential catalysts for markets. We look ahead to the UK election on Thursday. We've got decisions from the Fed and the ECB, and of course the December 15th tariff deadline to look ahead to as well. With all that in mind, we saw gains at the end of last week and again for global equities on a weekly basis. The Stock 600 starts the week really drifting, absolutely absolutely flat. We saw a big gain for US equities on Friday following the blockbuster jobs data. We trade unchanged on US futures right now, and the 10-year Treasury yield holds above 180, but we slip 1.5 basis points to a 182 handle. And cable on the front foot as well following the weekend polls for the UK election. 131.60. This is Bloomberg.
Listen, as a hiring manager, I've got to tell you, the best job candidate isn't always the typical candidate. Sometimes they're a grad of life.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones you're used to.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
You knew the risks when you decided to drive drunk. There could be a crash. People could get hurt or killed. But that didn't stop you, did it? You knew you could get arrested. You could incur huge legal expenses, and you could possibly even lose your job. You were well aware of the consequences of driving drunk. But one thing's for sure. You were wrong when you said it was no big deal. Drive sober or get pulled over. This message brought to you by NHTSA.
Startups and research universities like New Jersey Institute of Technology are fueling the innovation economy. And few people are better positioned to see what's on the horizon in New Jersey than physicist and state representative Andrew Zwicker.
How technology is transforming our financial sector is revolutionary, and so much of that is in New Jersey. We are innovators when it comes to agriculture, and there is opportunity now for great transformation in how are we going to grow food in an ever-growing population, and how do we turn urban centers into agricultural centers. Autonomous vehicles is another one where we have some of the world's leading experts, and how this will transform how those who are either elderly or are visually impaired or mobily impaired can start to use autonomous vehicles to transform their lives and have access to transportation they could have never had before.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu/research.
Asset management. Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Coffee shop, cashback, cat flaps, cashback, beanbags, rucksack, hire car, buy a car, flapjack, cashback, dumbbells, cashback, takeaway, holiday to anywhere the sun is at, bum bag, laptop, big match, hatchback, binge watching, paintballing, crab fishing, cashback, anything you want to buy, everywhere you want to go. Guess what? Cashback. Whatever you spend your money on, get money back every time with the American Express Platinum Cashback Everyday Credit Card. Search Amex Cashback. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Minimum annual spend to receive cashback. Terms apply. 18 plus subject to approval.
So it's already December 9th. Well, at Boots, this Christmas, there's better than half price on selected gifts. So work your way through that Christmas list and save money on gifts like Liz Earle's Skincare Staples Collection and other selected products. Get on it today at the What to Buy Your Bestie for the Leasty Boutique at your nearest Boots in London White City Shopping Centre. So gift like you get them before it ends 17th of December at selected stores and boots.com.
Forget the cheese basket and socks this holiday season and get the ones you love and even the ones you just kind of like. A subscription to TuneIn Premium. With TuneIn Premium, you'll be giving them the gift they can enjoy all year long. Featuring live NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB games, commercial-free music, and even podcasts. TuneIn Premium brings the best in audio to you. This year, we're making Santa's job a whole lot easier. So forget the stocking. Stuff their phone with TuneIn Premium. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Hey, can't watch the big NBA game because your life's just too busy? I've got some news for you. TuneIn Premium is the answer to all your problems. Hear every home and away game live or on demand everywhere you go. Just search NBA to listen.
Hey, TuneIn listeners, Steve Kornacki here from NBC News. I want to tell you about a podcast I'm hosting called Article 2, Inside Impeachment. It's dedicated to bringing you the latest developments on the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I talk to NBC News reporters who are closest to the story to break down what's new, what matters, and what it means for the 2020 election. Search and favorite Article 2 Inside Impeachment on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Don't want to miss a second of your NFL team's next matchup? Let TuneIn remind you. Just make sure notifications are enabled on your phone and search for your team profile on the TuneIn app. Then, find the game you want under events and tap Notify Me. We'll send you an alert as soon as live coverage begins.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's European headquarters in London, I'm Roger Hearing with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash, and 45 minutes, I should say, into the European market. Very little direction out there. Stocks, Euro 600 fluctuated before drifting a bit lower. Declines in technology shares, offsetting gains in retailers. It's down around 1/10 of 1% at the moment. FTSE 100 very much the same. The CAC down around 1/4 of 1%. The DAX around 1/10 of 1% as well. So a sense there perhaps of not a lot of risk on sentiment at all. And looking over to the oil area, because we've been driven by what happened on Friday with the announcement of those Saudi cutbacks in output. Oil losing some gains there, $58.81 dollars to the barrel. WTI down 0.6 of 1%. Brent crude down 0.5 of 1%, 64.06. And in the bond market, we're seeing a sense, I suppose, of gain there in terms of the yield going down, because we've got at the moment the 10-year Treasury is down almost 2 basis points. 1.8 is the handle. Gilts also down 3 basis points, 0.74. And in the terms of the currency, again, we are looking, of course, at cable in the light of this week's election here in the UK. Currently 1.3157. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Sandra Kilhoff with more on what's going on around the world. Sandra.
Good morning, Roger. The FBI is calling a Florida attack by a Saudi Air Force officer that left 3 U.S. sailors dead an act of terrorism. Criticism is mounting over the incident, including Donald Trump's rapid defense of the Saudi royal family. Yesterday, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman called the U.S. president to express his condolences, saying the kingdom is willing to fully cooperate with U.S. authorities. France is gearing for a new week of protests, with both the government and labour unions vowing to stick to their guns in the battle over President Macron's pension plans. Public sector workers are today expected to take action to disrupt cities across the country, with the reform due to be presented on Wednesday. And YouTube star Lad Baby, who scored last year's UK Christmas #1 with an ode to sausage rolls, is mounting a second assault on the charts. The dad blogger has rewritten Jonah and the Jets' I Love Rock and Roll for this year's attempt, once again extolling the virtues of pork-stuffed pastry. I Love Sausage Rolls was recorded at Abbey Road and is crammed full of meaty puns like I love sausage rolls, so put another one in the oven, baby. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sandra Kilhoff. This is Bloomberg. Naira.
Sandra, I love a sausage roll. On Sunday, I ate 2 sausage rolls in a row before I had my graduation from my yoga course. So I ate 2 sausage rolls, then did 108 sun salutations. So for anyone who thinks that all yoga teachers are vegans, I'm not one of them.
Yeah, you're bucking the trend there. You really are. I mean, eating sausage rolls before doing yoga, I mean, does that even work?
Maybe you should be going on Lad Baby's podcast and talk about it.
Oh my goodness. Lad Baby, hit me up. Yeah.
Anyway, joining us here in the London studio to talk not about meat.
No.
But
a meaty week, though.
The meaty week in the markets. It's
We've
Peter
got-
Dixon, Global Equities Economist at Commerzbank. Peter, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
We've got a lot scheduled this week. We've got the Fed making a decision. We've got ECB making a decision. We've got Swiss National Bank making a decision. Oh, and there's also the UK election. I mean, what are you most concerned about this week? What would make your Christmas better? What would make your Christmas worse?
Well, I think the thing which markets will be focusing on, first of all, is the election. Because I think it's pretty much a done deal that the Federal Reserve will be on hold. Ditto the ECB. So I think markets are looking to the election for confirmation that their expectation of a Conservative victory will indeed be confirmed. But there was a risk, of course, that may not happen in a hung Parliament. It's an outside chance, but it's not impossible. And under those circumstances, Friday could be a very interesting day on the markets.
Yeah, and how much higher could we trade on cable on Friday then in the event of that Conservative victory from 130-160 now?
Probably not a lot, in my view. You might get as high as 135 over the course of the week. But, given that the Tory majority is already baked in, I rather suspect that would be the absolute limit for the moment, because let's not forget the fact that we're only going to get hopefully we're going to get over the line with regard to Brexit in January, and then the next round starts, and of course that's when sterling comes back under pressure.
Let's talk about the US economy, though, because we had amazing jobs data on Friday, certainly bucked the trend, and a suggestion, certainly that this morning, in fact, from Goldman Sachs, saying that they are expecting, in some ways, or very bullish on the idea of a China-US trade deal, phase one at least, getting through, but basically moving away from the sense of a recession next year. Are you feeling the same?
Yes, I don't think we've ever bought into the idea that there'd be a recession. I think the general consensus is that the US economy will slow. Okay, that's fine. If you get a 2%, maybe even a slightly sub 2% growth rate next year, that's probably in line with the US economy's potential growth rate. So that's okay. Under those circumstances, the labour market remains reasonably well supported. And, we all carry on as we have done this year, watching markets go higher. But I think, and I've said this many times, it haven't been proven right yet, but I think there was a sense that this is a cycle which is, it's very old in the sense that it's the longest cycle on record. It isn't going to take much for it to be knocked off track. So I think the risks to the US outlook, they mount with each passing year.
Yeah, and in terms of the risks, Peter, if we see job growth slowing in 2020, should the market read that as this is just a tight labour market, nothing to be too concerned about, or should they read it as actually the trade war is having an impact on the labour market in the US? And how much does that distinction actually matter if the end result is slowing jobs growth?
Well, I think if you get slowing jobs growth accompanied by higher wage inflation, then you're talking about a classic tight labour market. Under those circumstances, the consumer should remain well supported. If you get the jobs growth without any wage inflation, that I think might be more of a cause for concern, because I think it would be telling you that perhaps the fundamental strength of the economy isn't what it was.
So looking toward 2020 and the potential for any kind of rate cuts from the Fed, Powell's saying the cuts mid-cycle adjustments, policies are in a good place, he's talked about. So the strong job market does kind of bear that out. So, is there any prospect really of a further rate cut in 2020?
It's entirely possible. If the economy does indeed lose a little bit of momentum, the Fed will come under further political pressure, of course, to take more action. And given that we're not seeing any tightening anywhere else in the world, the onus is going to be on the US, I think, to ease, certainly from a political perspective. And I do think that there will be some indications that maybe the economy won't be quite as robust next year as certain other forecasters suggest. Under those circumstances, I do think you could get one further Fed rate cut. But again, it will be sold as a precautionary rate cut to keep the economy alive.
And a big theme that we're sort of looking at today, Peter, is the risk of Japanification going global in 2020. Jan Lois at JP Morgan still talking about the possibility of zero yields in the US. That would be under a plain vanilla recession. That's all that it would take, according to him, for the US to succumb to zero yields. So for bond traders, we're well aware of the concerns of Japanification. What about for the equity equity market? What implications would that have if we did see some sort of global Japanification or even just the threat or worry of it in 2020?
Well, Japanification in the equity market would, of course, mean that we get to an exceptionally elevated level and a massive collapse, and we don't ever get back to the previous highs. I mean, I don't think we're at that stage, to be honest. I mean, much as I have concerns about valuations in equity markets, I do think that a Japanification scenario would see possibly quite a major sell-off. But let's not forget that Japanification is a process. It's not a one-off event. It's something which emerges over time, because Japanification, I think, it would be characterized by a collapse initially in either the economy or the markets or whatever, followed by very little recovery thereafter. And now, if you want to talk about Japanification, perhaps you could look to Europe and say, well, we've got the closest conditions to Japan that we can, we're going to get in the near term, and equities have done pretty well, thank you very much. So, Japanification doesn't have to be the end of the line for equities, although it probably will mean a bumpy ride in the initial phase.
Oh, and what about Europe? Because you mentioned it there, and of course the ECB is one of the decisions this week. I mean, do you detect any change in the weather as far as Germany's industrial output, things like that are concerned? In 2020, where do you see that going?
I think more of the same. I mean, I think it's going to be a slow haul for Europe, particularly for Germany, until we get some illustration, or some signs rather, that the US-China trade deal is done and dusted. And frankly, I'm not that optimistic in the short term. I don't think we'll see much out of Germany, and as a consequence, growth will remain sluggish. The ECB basically it's maxed out monetary policy, and I rather suspect that Madame Lagarde will be going around European capitals again, knocking on doors, saying, "Can we have more fiscal stimulus, please? Because there's not an awful lot more we can do."
And is there much potential for euro upside then? I mean, strategists are seeing 115 by the end of 2020 in the Bloomberg survey.
Maybe. I mean, I think it depends on the extent to which the Fed cuts. I mean, if the Federal Reserve is in easing mode, as we suspect it might be, then the euro could gain a little bit of ground. But frankly, that upside I think is fairly limited given where we are in the cycle right now.
All right, Peter, thank you very much for joining us. Peter Dixon there, Global Equities Economist at Commerzbank. And coming up in the next hour of Daybreak Europe, Anna Edwards and Matt Miller are back here speaking to Mario Wettmaner, who's Senior Multi-Asset Strategist at State Street.
And we are an hour almost into the equity market open in Europe and still going nowhere on the Stock 600 on a headline level. We trade absolutely flat after gains of more than 1% on Friday. In terms of industry groups, retail banks, commodity producers outperforming to the upside, oil and gas stocks under pressure, as we do actually see a little bit of fading in the oil price following a big jump on Friday, surprise output curbs from the Saudis, Brent at 63.99, WTI at 58.75. This is Bloomberg.
Sometimes in business, you have to take risks, but trading across borders and currencies shouldn't be one of them. With Western Union Business Solutions, we can help you manage the risk of doing business internationally. Our valuable experience, expert knowledge, and extensive global network makes us the ideal trusted partner for your business. And with our customer-focused support team, you'll receive a dedicated solution and personalized service. Visit westernunionbusiness.com. Western Union Business Solutions, a global financial network you can trust.
The Honda Jazz, the car that feels fabulously small on the outside, yet deceptively big on the inside, with its incredible storage solutions and magic folding seats. Not to mention the suite of advanced safety features. And now with the small but big Jazz event, it's available with 0% APR representative and 5 years complimentary servicing until January 31st. Visit your local dealer to find out more. Honda dealers are credit brokers, not lenders. Finance provided by Honda Finance Europe, authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Terms and conditions apply.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited. Like for reals. None of this, we're so unlimited. But you can't watch your fave Christmas film endlessly. Or dead scroll inspo for tree decorations until 4 in the morning. We wouldn't do that to you.
We have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Ho, ho, ho.
Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data.
The world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
What we're now seeing for the first time is this facade of absolute unity beginning to break down in the EU.
We expect that there will be some type of slowdown recession beyond 2019.
The European banking system, although recovering, hasn't recovered, and there are areas of fragility.
We've seen this before, trade talks that lead nowhere, and then tariffs. We just swing from one to the other, and markets get caught in the middle.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe with Anna Edwards and Matt Miller on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning from London. I'm Anna Edwards.
And from the German capital of Berlin, I'm Matt Miller. You're listening to Daybreak Europe on London DAB Digital Radio. And are we allowed to, can we tease the new format of our show, of our television show?
I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can, Matt.
So we have an all-new format for the European Market Open. If you join us on television, you can join us a little bit earlier. We now start at 7 a.m. UK time and go until 9 UK time before we join you here on radio. If occasionally a viewer, you can tune a little bit earlier for more from Anna and myself.
Absolutely. So that is exciting news from our Bloomberg TV offering here on Bloomberg Radio. Of course, we're looking ahead to a really busy week, aren't we, Matt? We've got, of course, the UK election, I say, because I'm sitting here in London. But before we get there, we've got Fed meeting, we've got ECB meeting. That's on Thursday also, so that makes things busy. And the focus as we get towards next weekend will very much be on the trade tensions as well, because that's the deadline, isn't it, for these new tariffs to come in?
That's right, Sunday. So December 15th, the U.S. is set to enact tariffs on a further $160 billion in goods coming from China. The question is, will Donald Trump suspend those tariffs, suspend that deadline in order to get a phase one deal done, or will he continue what he's done to reduce the U.S.-China trade deficit?
Let's take you through the markets. We do that every 15 minutes here on Bloomberg Radio. And European equity markets actually on the back foot a little bit this morning, aren't they? We've got the Stock 600 down by around 0.1%, the FTSE 100 down by around 0.1%. We've got the CAC 40 down around 0.25%. We had some news lines coming out from HSBC just a moment ago on some management changes. So just looking at the share price there, it hasn't had a meaningful impact there. But Andy Maguire will be retiring as the group's COO, we understand. We also see that Samir Asaf will be stepping down as the CEO of the GB&M part of the business, the global banking part of the business. So that's of interest to anybody focused on HSBC. More broadly, the story is one of a focus on, as we've said, trade tensions between the US and China. That continues to be one of the aspects of the market that investors are keenly waiting for news on. The market over in Asia, the stock market in Asia was up by 0.3% by the close of business, waiting for new news lines really around trade, but at the same time digesting some disappointment on Chinese exports, resilience perhaps on the Chinese import story. Also looking at the US data from Friday and the really strong jobs report that we had there, and kind of continuing to digest that. We see then a sluggish picture for equity markets, a slightly more resilient one for bond markets, so a little bit of a move downwards in yields. So the US 10-year yield is at 1.817 right now. Oil prices a little bit weaker, retreating with the global equities risk assets picture. So 58.75 is where we trade on WTI, or 63.98 on Brent. Matt?
All right, now as we mentioned, investors are looking ahead to a big week for central banks, for the U.S.-China trade war, as well as UK politics. Let's bring in Maria Feitmana. She is senior multi-asset strategist at State Street, to help us figure out what to do with our assets through these big decisions. Maria, let me ask first about the central banks picture. I'm going to the ECB on Thursday. I don't expect much change there, but globally, central banks have really helped risk assets rally this year. We're up 25% on the S&P 500. Does that continue?
Good morning. I actually agree with you, Matt, 100%. I think it was really the year of central bank support that supported financial markets. They had a kind of limited success supporting real economy globally, but they definitely supported financial markets. And my suspicion is that given the massive uncertainty that's probably not going to be resolved anytime soon, thinking of trade negotiations, thinking of UK future relationship with rest of the world post-Brexit, thinking of European fiscal spending, whether they're coming, how they're coming, when they're coming. So I think those uncertainties will stay, which makes me think that the support we had from central banks this year is very likely to stay as well. So yes, I'm quite positive on that front.
You're quite positive on the support from central banks. Do you think that policy is overly accommodative there, Maria?
I mean, that's kind of a judgment call. I think policy is more accommodative than real economy warrants for. But given the uncertainties that hang over us, so if you kind of try to discount the worst possible scenario, then you probably do need to have that degree of accommodation.
So what question, if I get a question to Christine Lagarde on Thursday, what should I ask her?
How far along is she in her negotiations with her fiscal counterparts? How much she can... I mean, there's a big hope, the big dream for all European investors is that that she would somehow manage to persuade Germans, Dutch, and other Northern European governments to spend. So how far along she is in those negotiations?
And you realistically see that fiscal spending is going to be part of the story? Because, you know, lots of people talk about, yes, there's an incentive to invest both in a green revolution, and that fits with lots of political platforms and fits with what we're hearing a lot from European governments. There's that incentive to invest. There's also very low interest rates, acts as a financial incentive to invest. And yet we don't see as much of it on the ground as you might realistically expect.
Yeah, no, I agree that, Mario Draghi spent his whole tenure as a president of ECB talking about the need to spend, and that almost fell on kind of deaf ears, and we haven't seen very much there. And I think the point about green investment, green kind of revolution is probably something that can potentially move a dial. And I think it's very hard to find any government in Europe who is not in support of that. And I suspect that probably one way to kind of get that train moving is to think about green bonds and investment in the green technology, and that can potentially break the deadlock.
By the way, I'm taking the train to Frankfurt. You know what? This is my first... I've decided I'm going to stop flying domestically because one of my 25-year-old producers told me about Flugscheme at the beginning of the year. And now I've decided my footprint, my carbon footprint is so big that I've got to do something to reduce it. So we'll see if the Deutsche Bahn gets me there on time. I'm going to go to Frankfurt tonight to interview the CEO of Deutsche Bank. Have the European banks, I mean, is the I don't want to say failure, but is the decline in health or the lack of health in European banks been a real problem for European growth?
Definitely. I mean, the European banks is our pet hate. I have to say that's been our underweight recommendation for years and years, and we see very little progress on that front. I mean, it is a little bit circular that European banks are suffering from lack of growth in Europe, and because they're suffering, they can't invest, and that kind of makes the growth a little bit ever so more challenging. So it's a little bit of chicken and egg situation, but we've seen very little progress on European bank side, and I think, to be frank, it's very difficult for Europe to turn a corner if banks are still struggling.
Okay, thanks very much, Maria. Thanks for joining us. Good to get your thoughts this morning on Bloomberg TV and here on Bloomberg Radio. Maria Weitmaner, Senior Multi-Asset Strategist at State Street.
Now let's get over to Sandra Kilhoff for your global news headlines. Sandra?
Good morning, Matt. 5 people have died and a number of people are injured and missing after a volcano erupted on New Zealand's White Island. Nobody lives there, but groups of tourists visit it regularly. Here's the country's Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern.
We believe around 100 people were on or around the island at the time, and some of those at this stage are unaccounted for. A number of people are reportedly injured and are being transported to shore.
Authorities are warning people to stay away from the area and be aware of the potential for ashfall. At the same time, authorities are not able to actually rescue the people on White Island due to the serious risk of life. Hundreds of thousands of people joined Hong Kong's biggest demonstration in months yesterday. Bloomberg's Ian Marlowe says it's a sign that popular unrest will continue into the new year.
The protesters have sought to keep the pressure on the government with a combination of peaceful mass marches, like the one on Sunday afternoon, and more violent actions like shutting down transport networks and vandalizing mainland-linked businesses. Protester calls to disrupt the Monday commute and workday, however, hadn't materialized as of late morning. In Hong Kong, Ian Marlowe, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
France faces another day of disruption today as transport and other public sector workers continue to strike. Bloomberg's James Regan has the latest on the protests against President Macron's pensions reform.
A second major day of demonstrations is planned across the country on Tuesday, with polls showing the movement still has majority support among French people. Prime Minister Edouard Philippe is expected to lay out the details of the government's proposals on Wednesday this week. In Paris, James Regan, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And Finland's Transport Minister Sanna Marin has been selected to lead the Social Democratic Party, making her the country's youngest Prime Minister ever. The 34-year-old's appointment comes after Antti Rinne resigned on Tuesday after her party and the governing coalition said it had lost confidence in him following his handling of a postal strike. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sandra Kilhoff. This is Bloomberg. Anna.
Thanks very much for that, Sandra. Now with your morning sports news, here's William Essler.
Celtic won a 10th successive domestic trophy yesterday as they defended the Scottish League Cup. Despite being second best for much of the match, they beat Old Firm rivals Rangers 1-0. After the game, manager Neil Lennon admitted they had goalkeeper Fraser Forster to thank for the win. Leicester cut Liverpool's lead at the top of the Premier League to 8 points. They eased to a 4-1 victory at Aston Villa yesterday and are now 6 points clear of third place Manchester City. Wolves are now on their best top-flight run for 57 years. A 2-2 draw at Brighton extended their unbeaten run to 11 games. Sheffield United came from behind to win 2-1 at Norwich, with Newcastle doing the same against Southampton. West Brom are back on top of the Championship. They thrashed Swansea 5-1 at the Hawthorns yesterday. The result means they're 2 points clear of Leeds. And Exeter's perfect start to Rugby Union's European Champions Cup continued yesterday. They survived a second-half fight back from Sale to win 22-20. Elsewhere, Gloucester got their first victory in Pool 5, beating Connacht 26-17.
Now let's get your U.S. sports report with Pete Fox. Pete?
In New Orleans, a thrilling come-from-behind win for the San Francisco 49ers to move their record to 11-2. A big play from George Kittle coming from Jimmy Garoppolo set up Robbie Gould for the 30-yard game winner. 48-46 the final. Garoppolo throwing for 4 touchdowns in the win. Drew Brees had 349 and 5 touchdowns in the loss. Jets a walk-off win against the Dolphins, 22-21. Sam Ficken hitting a 44-yarder. Raiders fall to the Titans, 42-21. Chiefs with a little revenge on the Patriots, snapping their 21-game home winning streak with a 23-16 win. And Lamar Jackson keeps the Ravens rolling as they take care of the Bills in Orchard Park, 24-17 for their 9th consecutive win. I'm Pete Fox. That's your Bloomberg NBC World Sports Update.
Pete, thanks very much. Now let's take a look at the events you should be watching out for. Today, Saudi Arabia is expected to reveal its 2020 budget. We'll bring you all the details here on Bloomberg Television and on Bloomberg Radio. In Europe, French President Emmanuel Macron welcomes the leaders of Russia and Ukraine, as well as Germany's Angela Merkel. They'll discuss resolving tensions in Crimea. That's as protests continue across France, but also as Nord Stream 2 gets closer and closer to being finished, giving Vladimir Putin no real good reason for negotiating great prices with Ukraine for gas transport. And in the UK, it is the final week of the election. We're expecting campaigns to heat up on all sides, and we'll bring you all the details you need to know. This is Bloomberg.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's BABBEL.com.
Something remarkable happens when just the right elements come together. Ideas with technology. Data with inspiration, investors with solutions. This is what Invesco does every day, because they believe the possibilities of life and investing are greater when we come together. Invesco. Let's invest in greater possibilities together. To learn more, visit Invesco.com/together. Invesco Distributors, Incorporated.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Paul Allen.
One of the world's largest sporting retailers has just opened a 5th store in Australia and is planning to expand across the country and beyond. Joining us now, we have Decathlon Australia CEO Olivier Robinet. 5 stores in Australia now. You obviously see some potential in this market.
Yeah, sure. Aussies are the most sporty people of the world. So for Decathlon, it's a huge opportunity.
Retail spending in Australia is down. There's evidence that the tax cuts, rate cuts are not being spent. People are opting to save. Is that your experience? Have you noticed a downturn in retail spending?
It's not easy, but I think it's an opportunity for Decathlon. Here, Aussies are really sporty, but sporting goods are really expensive. And our aim is to make sports more accessible to more Aussies. So Decathlon work a lot on just to innovate. And just have an example, for example, of this mask designed by our teammates. And this is a very innovative mask, as you can breathe underwater by your nose and just breathe relax with a 180 degrees view. So millions of people in the world went under the water thanks to Decathlon and to this mask. And perhaps we should have used it last week in Sydney also.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg's bureau here in London, I'm Anna Edwards with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. European equity markets down 0.2% right now on the Stock 600. The FTSE 100 down 0.3%. The CAC 40 down around 1/3%, and the Xetra DAX down around 1/8%. So we see some weakness on European equity markets. US futures also point downwards. We expect to be weaker by between 1 and 0.2% for the major US markets when we start the US trading day a little bit later on. The MSCI Asia Pacific up by 0.4%. So a little more optimism actually coming through in the Asian session, but some of that was catch up from Friday, of course, in the US session when we saw that really strong jobs report, 266,000 new jobs being created by the US economy, and that led to some strong upward moves for stocks. That's rippling through into the Asian session, of course, overnight from Sunday into Monday. Let's talk about some other assets for you, just checking those. We've got the oil price a little weaker, down 0.5% on Brent at $64 a barrel. We see money coming out of stocks, a little going into treasuries, so treasury yields coming down. 1.81 is where we sit for the yield on the US 10-year. Of course, that yield spiked up as we got that jobs report and then came back down a little bit. The dollar itself is a little bit weaker, down 0.1%. We see a little bit of a move higher in the pound at 131.64, up 0.2% against the US dollar. Some interesting individual moves. Tullow Oil is a big faller, down by 60% on some disappointing production data and management changes there, and that is explaining why the oil sector is the weakest performing for European equities today. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Sandra Kilhoff with more on what's going on around the world.
Good morning, Anna. Indian lawmakers are set to approve legislation to prevent Muslim migrants from winning citizenship. It's the latest move in Narendra Modi's hardline Hindu nationalist program. The proposals allow citizenship for Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists and others who arrived illegally from neighbouring countries, but Muslims are excluded. The leaders of Russia and Ukraine will hold their first face-to-face talks today in an attempt to tackle 5.5 years of conflict in East Ukraine. More than 13,000 people have died in fighting between government forces and rebels backed by Russia. Now there is hope of a breakthrough after Ukraine withdrew from 3 areas and accepted a series of conditions. President Volodymyr Zelensky will join Russia's Vladimir Putin in Paris, along with the leaders of France and Germany. And Russia could face an unprecedented 4-year ban from major international sporting events. It follows accusations that it manipulated laboratory doping data. The decision will be made later at a meeting of the World Anti-Doping Agency in Lausanne, Switzerland. Global News 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sandra Kilhoff. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
Just gone 9:20 in the city. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. We're joined by Sarman Cartledge. He is the author of A System Apart, Hong Kong's Political Economy from 1997 until now. And he wrote a piece for Bloomberg Opinion on how Hong Kong's struggle to stay relevant is hurting the economy, or how Hong Kong maybe is losing its struggle to stay relevant. Okay, Simon, clearly Hong Kong has relevance historically, culturally, but you're saying they're sort of becoming an also-ran to Shenzhen.
That's right. On current trends, like Shenzhen, whose economy was the same size as Hong Kong's at the beginning of this year, could be anywhere up to double Hong Kong's size within little more than a decade.
So, good morning to you, Simon. So I know it's a little simplistic to talk about the rivalry between cities, but if we are looking for where Hong Kong loses its crown to, are you looking at other Chinese cities rather than looking at other Asian standout cities such as Singapore, for example?
Yes, I think the principal question for Hong Kong economically is how it manages its relationship with the rest of China. That's far more important than trying to compete or out-compete Singapore.
Well, what's the future look like, I wonder, from your take, Simon? I mean, do these protesters have any chance of actually liberalizing Hong Kong, or will China eventually crack down hard and stop it?
Well, from all we've seen in the last 6 months, they don't have a great chance of liberalising Hong Kong, let alone the rest of China. But the argument that I'm putting forward is that Hong Kong has failed over the last 20 years to evolve because of the system that's been put in place. So it'd be a good idea if it could liberalise a lot more within Hong Kong itself, never mind the rest of China.
And the things you suggest here that need to happen, you point out that that new business creation is not something that happens very much in Hong Kong. You say one of the most striking things in the city's history, nearly 3 decades, has been a failure to produce a single major new business. So what is it that can be done then to address that?
Well, I think this goes back to the protests as well. But what Hong Kong needs is to look at the forces which are very conservative forces which are preventing change in the city. That one of those, of course, is in China, in Beijing. The other is the way the elections are set up here to choose a new leader that's dominated by established business.
So what do you see in terms of protests? We had a big one this weekend, but the message, at least as we received it, Simon, was yes, they want a more liberal society, but they also want to stop the violence and the problems that have thrown a wrench in Hong Kong's financial wheels.
Yeah, well, I think the violence one seems to me, frankly, to be overstated over the last several months. Yes, we've seen a slow escalation of violence, but it's been mainly violence against property. We haven't seen a lot of people hurt, and we, thankfully, have seen no one directly die as a result of the protests.
It's interesting that you put such emphasis on the need to change the culture in Hong Kong to make it more entrepreneurial, to recapture its entrepreneurial past, whereas a lot of the protest activity seems to be about preserving some of what they have in the face of threats from China.
Yeah, I think they're related. I think basically what Hong Kong has, what they put in place in 1997, was a system aimed at preserving the very strong features of sort of 1980s Hong Kong, which wasn't democratic, which had a very sort of tycoon-driven business. But now, here we are. We're more than 20 years on since 1997. Neither has changed. On the business side, we're seeing sort of conservative forces continue their dominance, and on the popular side, from the people of Hong Kong, they're saying, where is the more accountable government we were promised 20 years ago?
Okay, thanks very much for your thoughts. Simon Cartledge, author of the book A System Apart, Hong Kong's Political Economy from 1997 until now. You can read more from the Bloomberg Opinion team at bloomberg.com/opinion and on the terminal by typing OPIN. Go. When we come back, we'll have more on the UK elections. That looms on the calendar Thursday. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. Amazon and the NFL are pairing up to help solve the epidemic of football injuries, especially concussions. Amazon's cloud unit will provide software to gather volumes of player health data, as well as analyze information and scan video images to better treat and rehabilitate injuries. They hope to eventually use the software to predict and prevent them. Billionaire David Tepper, owner of the NFL's Carolina Panthers, is one step closer to adding another sports team to his portfolio. Major League Soccer's Board of Governors agreed to move forward on the final steps toward granting the league's latest expansion team to Charlotte, North Carolina, a bid led by Tepper. The hedge fund titan has agreed to pay roughly $300 million for the expansion fee, according to a person familiar with the deal. Tepper acquired the Panthers in a record $2.3 billion deal last year. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
IBKR is the professional's gateway to the world's markets. The IBKR Pro account plan offers investors enhanced price execution, our lowest margin loan rates, and highest interest paid on idle cash balances, and access to our powerful trader workstation, web, mobile, and API trading platforms. In addition, the IBKR Pro account plan offers low-cost access to stocks, options, futures, forex, fixed income, and more on over 125 markets in 31 countries. Learn more or open an IBKR Pro account at ibkr.com.
What? 'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can fill your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery is running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We can't in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
What if your email was organised by project and not by date? What if everyone looked at the same thing instead of their own inbox? Then it wouldn't be email at all. Forget your fragmented, jumbled inbox and make the change to channels in Slack. Spaces dedicated to individual projects, topics, or teams. All your communication is neatly organised and everyone is on the same page. Slack. Choose a better way to work. Get started at slack.com.
In celebration of the release of Disney's Frozen 2, we invite you to live your family winter adventure with Marriott Bonvoy. When you book a stay and eat at one of our hotels, up to 2 kids under 12 stay and eat for free. Magical destinations across Europe are waiting for you. So get ready for your unforgettable holiday with Marriott Bonvoy. Disney's Frozen 2 in cinemas now. Offer ends 27th December 2019. Terms and conditions apply. See marriott.co.uk for more details.
Ah, Christmas. A time for sharing gifts and laughter. And photos and videos. Make the most of it with a SIM-only deal packed with data from Tesco Mobile. Like a 10-gig SIM for just £13 a month. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile today. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 29th of December. 12-month contract and unlocked 4G-enabled phone required. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Sometimes in business, you have to take risks, but trading across borders and currencies shouldn't be one of them. With Western Union Business Solutions, we can help you manage the risk of doing business internationally. Our valuable experience, expert knowledge, and extensive global network makes us the ideal trusted partner for your business. And with our customer-focused support team, you'll receive a dedicated solution and personalized service. Visit westernunionbusiness.com. Western Union Business Solutions, a global financial network you can trust.
Everybody needs somebody.
At Amazon, find everything you need to make the kids smile this Christmas. You can get items like the LOL Surprise 2-in-1 Bamper, Monopoly with electronic voice banking, and the Barbie 3-story townhouse. All with low prices and free UK delivery on eligible orders over £20. So there'll be more, and more.
Wow, thanks, Mum and Dad.
Amazon, delivering all you need for the kids for less.
Broadcasting live to London on DAB Digital Radio, to New York, Bloomberg 1130, to Washington DC, Bloomberg 99.1, to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1, to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Good morning from the German capital of Berlin. I'm Matt Miller.
And I'm Anna Edwards. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak Europe. It's just gone 9:30 here in London, and we need to check the data then, Matt.
Let's do that. We do it for you for 15 minutes. So right now we're looking at a drop in equities across Europe. Not huge red arrows here, but the CAC 40 is down more than 1/3% right now, or 20 points to 58.51. The FTSE is down 21 points to 72.19. If you're preparing for the U.S. Open this morning, we also see red arrows there that have gotten increasingly bigger, but they're still just 0.1% down on Dow Jones, S&P 500, and NASDAQ 100 mini futures contracts. So you could see a risk-off session today on Wall Street. U.S. yields are down, but from a relatively high level. So 1.8208% is where we see the 10-year yield right now trading. We see the yen gaining strength against the dollar. You can now buy only 108.4625 yen for your dollar. Meanwhile, the greenback is losing ground against the euro as well at 110.67 and the pound at 131.67. Brent crude is going for $64.05 a barrel.
Matt, let's talk about what's going on as we gear up for the UK election this Thursday. Prime Minister Boris Johnson is returning to his key message that only he can deliver Brexit. Polls show his Conservative Party on course to win a majority in Thursday's vote. That's as the opposition Labour Party will tell voters while campaigning that they will put money in your pockets and power in your hands. Joining us in the London studio, Bloomberg Senior Executive Editor David Merritt. David, good morning to you. So we get into the final days of campaigning. Interesting to see that Boris Johnson's going to Sunderland, where he will talk about the Sunderland Roar, which apparently we heard on the 23rd of June 2016. And we're reminded, as he goes to the northeast of England, we are reminded that it was the early results on the night of the 23rd of June 2016 that really alerted everybody to the results of the Brexit vote and which way it would go. And still we are talking about Brexit, and still that's why he's on about this message.
That's right, all these years later, but I still remember it. I remember the roar. I remember that first result coming out of Sunderland, and that's what sent the pound falling as everyone realised that the country was going to vote for Brexit. So it was a sort of bellwether location there, and it's up in that part of the north of England where Johnson has got to take seats off Labour if he is going to claim this majority that the polls are pointing to. So yes, 3 days to go. We can expect him to be really feverishly touring all of these key marginal seats, actually seats that didn't used to be marginal, to be honest with you. This is safe Labour heartlands, and this is where the Tories think they've got a chance to take seats in Leave supporting areas from Labour.
Sometimes the first time in decades, many decades.
Or pushing a century, in fact.
Yes.
Some of these places have never had a Tory MP.
Okay.
Well, is that because they're just sick of this Brexit news day in, day out, and they want it to be over? And Jeremy Corbyn, who really is a Eurosceptic at heart, right, probably would love some sort of Brexit, some form of Brexit, and at any other time, isn't willing to back it.
Yeah, that's right. You know, Brexit has just it's ridden a coach and horses through the norms of British politics. So that's why people are no longer identifying so much as Labour or Conservative, but more Remain or Leave. And that's why you're seeing these seats suddenly come into play. There's also, you've got to remember, of course, the unpopularity of Mr. Corbyn is really historic in terms of an opposition leader. So you're getting all these communities who would have voted for almost anyone leading the Conservative Party, the Labour Party, but can't quite bring themselves to vote for him. And then his stance on Brexit, where, yes, as you said, he's a lifelong Eurosceptic, but he said he won't even campaign one way or the other if there were a second vote. That it really is alienating a lot of his core Labour.
Yeah, you're right to point out the popularity or lack of it for Jeremy Corbyn amongst the voters as a whole, but also looking at net dissatisfaction with the Prime Minister on the latest Ipsos Mori data. Actually, that's staggeringly poor compared to where he is at the beginning of his tenure, compared to other Prime Ministers. They go back over the 80s, the 90s and compare it, and that looks to be poor as well. Where do we stand then, David, as we head 4 days away? We see the reiteration of the same messages, the many not the few from Labour, get Brexit done from the Tories. It's ramming home those key phrases.
And the polls have narrowed a bit. Labour's support has increased and the Conservatives one has increased as well, and the smaller parties have been squeezed out. So I think both of them are thinking their messages are working, and I don't think you're going to hear any difference. And in fact, anything will be ramped up. The Conservatives actually falling back on the playbook that they used in 2016. We're hearing Mr. Johnson talk a lot about immigration, that old chestnut, and using that as a real sort of dog whistle call to the voters out there who might be wavering still, that they need to get out and vote in the cold weather on Thursday to see this thing through.
Cold and I think wet too. I think
Grim,
we have that to look forward to.
Not snow. They said at one point it was going to be snowing. I think that's dropped off, but it's going to be unpleasant probably.
We'll be grateful for small mercies. David, thank you very much. Bloomberg Senior Executive Editor David Merritt.
All right, let's get over to Sandra Kilhoff now with your global news headlines. Sandra?
Good morning, Matt. At least 5 people have died after a volcano erupted on New Zealand's White Island. A number of others are still missing, with around 50 tourists believed to have been in the area at the time. Deputy Police Commissioner John Timms says up to 20 people on the island need medical treatment.
At this stage, it is too dangerous for police and rescue services to go to the island. The island is currently covered in ash and volcanic material. We are taking expert advice with regards to the safety of any rescue attempt.
Hundreds of thousands of people joined Hong Kong's biggest demonstration in months in a sign that popular unrest will continue into the new year. Protest organisers say 800,000 people marched through the city on Sunday, while police put the number at around 180,000. The rally was the first promoted by the Civil Human Rights Front to win an official permit since August. The leaders of France, Germany, Russia and Ukraine meet in Paris today in a bid to secure the peace process in Crimea. Bloomberg's Caroline Conan has the preview.
This is actually the first time that Putin will shake hands with Zelensky, a former comedian who's been elected president of Ukraine in May of this year. But another issue could overshadow the summit. Over the weekend, French newspaper Le Monde unveiled new elements about the alleged Russian election meddling in the last French presidential elections. In Paris, Caroline Conan, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
And Germany's Social Democrats have formulated new demands for staying in the governing coalition. But as Bloomberg's Birgit Jennen explains, the CDU is showing little appetite to go along with the changes.
CDU General Secretary Paul Ziemiak rejected calls to give up the balanced budget for more spending, saying infrastructure investment should be increased by easing regulatory hurdles. The new SPD leadership wants to start talks soon. In Berlin, Birgit Jennen, Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sandra Kilhoff. This is Bloomberg. Anna.
Sandra, thanks very much. Now with your morning sports news, here's William Essler.
Celtic won a 10th successive domestic trophy yesterday as they defended the Scottish League Cup. Despite being second best for much of the match, they beat Old Firm rivals Rangers 1-0. After the game, manager Neil Lennon admitted they had goalkeeper Fraser Forster to thank for the win. Leicester cut Liverpool's lead at the top of the Premier League to 8 points. They eased to a 4-1 victory at Aston Villa yesterday and are now 6 points clear of third place Manchester City. Wolves are now on their best top flight run for 57 years. A 2-2 draw at Brighton extended their unbeaten run to 11 games. Sheffield United came from behind to win 2-1 at Norwich, with Newcastle doing the same against Southampton. West Brom are back on top of the Championship. They thrashed Swansea 5-1 at the Hawthorns yesterday. The result means they're 2 points clear of Leeds. And Exeter's perfect start to Rugby Union's European Champions Cup continued yesterday. They survived a second-half fight back from Sale to win 22-20. Elsewhere, Gloucester got their first victory in Pool 5, beating Connacht 26-17.
Let's get the U.S. sports now. For that, we go to Pete Fox. Pete?
In New Orleans, a thrilling come-from-behind win for the San Francisco 49ers to move their record to 11-2. A big play from George Kittle coming from Jimmy Garoppolo set up Robbie Gould for the 30-yard game winner. 48-46 the final. Garoppolo throwing for 4 touchdowns in the win. Drew Brees had 349 and 5 touchdowns in the loss. Jets a walk-off win against the Dolphins, 22-21. Sam Ficken hitting a 44-yarder. Raiders fall to the Titans, 42-21. Chiefs with a little revenge on the Patriots, snapping their 21-game home winning streak with a 23-16 win. And Lamar Jackson keeps the Ravens rolling as they take care of the Bills in Orchard Park, 24-17 for their 9th consecutive win. I'm Pete Fox. That's your Bloomberg NBC World Sports Update.
Pete, thanks very much. Coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, John Normand, head of cross-asset fundamental strategy at JP Morgan Chase, joins us next. We'll get his take on what looks to be a very busy week ahead. We've got the Fed meeting, we've got the ECB meeting, we've got a UK election to get through. So all of that could move markets, of course. And then at the end of the week, we build towards the possibility of further tariffs being put by the US administration on Chinese imports. The conversation we understand from Larry Kudlow of the White House, of course, over the weekend. The focus of the conversation between the US and China is really on just how much US product the Chinese are willing to commit to buy. So we're continuing to get you up to date with what's going on these markets, where stocks here in Europe down by 0.1%. A reminder, you can listen back to a selection of our interviews at BloombergRadio.com or on your Bloomberg Business app. More on the markets coming up. US futures point downwards by 0.1%. This is Bloomberg.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt US Kids, and the Ad Council.
Today, nearly all business is international business. The same goes for business disputes. That's why the International Center for Dispute Resolution provides a faster, more efficient approach to dispute resolution across borders. Backed by the American Arbitration Association, the ICDR is the world's leading provider of dispute resolution services. Find out why global expertise matters. Visit ICDR.org.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Sometimes in business, you have to take risks, but trading across borders and currencies shouldn't be one of them. With Western Union Business Solutions, we can help you manage the risk of doing business internationally. Our valuable experience, expert knowledge, and extensive global network makes us the ideal trusted partner for your business. And with our customer-focused support team, you'll receive a dedicated solution and personalized service. Visit westernunionbusiness.com. Western Union Business Solutions, a global financial network you can trust.
Everybody needs somebody.
At Amazon, find everything you need to make the kids smile this Christmas. You can get items like the LOL Surprise 2-in-1 Bamper, Monopoly with electronic voice banking, and the Barbie 3-story townhouse. All with low prices and free UK delivery on eligible orders over £20. So there'll be more, and more.
Wow, thanks, Mum and Dad.
Amazon, delivering all you need for the kids for less.
Ah, Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
What better way to celebrate the holidays than with a subscription to TuneIn Premium? With a bottomless library of the world's best audio, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Calling for the snap. He finally gets it. Throws a pass back in the end zone. Leaping one-hand catch. Touchdown.
Tonight, TuneIn has your Monday night NFL football with the New York Giants at the Philadelphia Eagles. Kickoff at 8:15 p.m. Eastern.
Got a block at the 10, inside the number the 5. Breaks a tackle. Into the end zone. Touchdown.
At home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium.
Receiver in motion. Handoff goes to the running back. Touchdown, Carson. Easily.
Upgrade today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Markets, headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is a Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. We are looking at 9:47 a.m. in the UK, but losses across the board here in terms of equity indexes. The FTSE down 0.2%, the CAC down 0.3%. If you're preparing for the US Open, we see red arrows there as well. Not big drops, 0.1% across the board, but we do see investors buying the yen against the dollar, 108.474 right now, and buying U.S. Treasuries, pushing the yield down to 1.8208%. Gold is also gaining in value, 1462.78 a troy ounce, as are the euro and the pound. Right now, sterling is trading at 131.6. Oil is down, though, with Brent crude losing 44 cents a barrel to $63.95, and we're looking at NYMEX crude right now that is also down 46 cents a barrel to 58.75. That's a Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. Now let's get back over to Sandra Kiloff with more on your global news headlines. Sandra?
Good morning, Matt. The FBI is calling a Florida attack by a Saudi Air Force officer that left 3 U.S. sailors dead an act of terrorism. Criticism is mounting over the incident, including Donald Trump's rapid defense of the Saudi royal family. Yesterday, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman called the U.S. president to express his condolences, saying the kingdom is willing to fully cooperate conflict with US authorities. France is gearing up for a new week of protests, with both the government and labour unions vowing to stick to their guns in the battle over President Macron's pension plans. Public sector workers are today expected to take action to disrupt cities across the country, with a reform due to be presented on Wednesday. And the world's largest private collection of whiskey is expected to fetch up to £8 million at auction. Colorado-based Richard Gooding built the collection over decades, regularly travelling to Scotland to source special bottles at auctions and distilleries before his death in 2014. Made up of almost 4,000 bottles, including one dating back to 1926, it is the world's largest collection by both value and volume. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Sandra Kilhoff. This is Bloomberg. Matt, are you a whiskey fan?
I am a bourbon drinker, for sure.
The American alternative.
Just time to snap that up as a Christmas gift, then.
Yeah.
They might take a remote bid.
I've got too many other things on my plate.
£8 million is what he needs on his account, Matt.
Well, yeah, I couldn't afford that anyway. Coming up next, our colleagues in the U.S. are getting ready for Bloomberg Daybreak. Nathan, if you're a bourbon drinker, whiskey drinker, maybe we could pool our spare change and pick that up.
There you go. Yeah, anything for a single barrel. Good morning, Matt and Anna. We're getting set for a week that'll be dominated by central banks, the UK election, of course, but this morning we're looking for developments in the U.S.-China trade war, and there are new signs of the toll it is taking, particularly in China. The big drop in exports there, even before the next round of tariffs is due to kick in this Sunday. We'll ask Steve Cheverone of Federated Global Investment Management where he sees negotiations going and what a deal could mean for stocks. Plus, we'll have more on the BIS report on the U.S. repo market, a warning on structural issues that may have been behind the liquidity crunch a few months back. And impeachment remains on the fast track, but President Trump may have reason to feel optimistic about re-election. Join me and Karen Moscow for all that coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak. Matt.
Thanks very much. Bloomberg Daybreak coming up next. If you're listening on Sirius XM channel 119, good morning to you. If you're listening on London DAB digital radio, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance.
Let's talk to our final guest of this hour then, Matt. Joining us here in the London studio, John Normand, Head of Cross-Asset Fundamental Strategy at JP Morgan Chase. John, very good morning to you. It appears we are nearly at the end of December, almost. Lots to do before we get to the end of December and get into 2020. But let's start with your sort of big picture narrative for the end of this year and into next year, your cross-asset strategy at this point.
Sure. For me, the dominant macro theme into next year is going to be the global economy returning to trend or above trend growth. And because I think markets have been moving in line with the improvement in data rather than overshooting the improvement in data, I think that if we get this outcome, which is global growth getting to above trend by the middle part of the year, there's still more upside on risky markets. It might only be 7 or 8% on global equities because they've moved a lot already, and some of them, like the U.S., have high PEs. But I still think the bias clients should carry into next year is pro-growth.
What would change that, John? What would change your thoughts, your strategy?
I'd say three things. One is just failure of the Chinese economy to stabilize. If it actually starts slowing again next year, I think that's important to the downside for risky markets. The second is any tariff escalation. We like everyone else, think either an agreement will be reached before Sunday, or the two sides will continue talking until they reach an agreement, but there'll be no escalation. But if there is escalation, you're back to the 2019 dynamic of growth moving lower and central banks seeing if they can offset that with lower rates. And I guess the third issue is a wild card that's got a defined date on it, and that's the Q1 Democratic primaries in the U.S. I think if those primaries seem to lean towards one of the left or center candidates, Warren or Sanders, you'd see at least the U.S. markets move lower, because you've really got to rethink the regulatory environment and the corporate profits environment.
I'm still spooked by the ghost of Christmas past, I guess, John, because, I mean, that was quite dramatic, wasn't it? What we saw around those low volume trading days just before the holidays and around New Year as well last year. I mean, are we all over that? Was that was, looking back, a lot of people said that was because the Fed was tightening too much, and that's changed now. We've got a very different outlook from the Fed. We then rolled into a period where we had what the BIS is calling, and still have to some extent, structural issues that mean that repo markets got tied up in knots. I mean, and that at a time of low volumes can be difficult, can't it? Are you nervous at all ahead of this sort of Christmas, New Year period?
Well, as always, there are seasonal lows in liquidity, and you really have to hope a negative shock doesn't hit during those periods because your price impact is so much larger. And nothing has changed on the structural side in terms of liquidity, particularly in the equity markets, and also more recently in the U.S. Treasury market. But I think what is different is just kind of this absence of negative catalysts. So if we're wrong on this December 15th deadline, obviously then the market's going to go down a lot in a low liquidity environment. But if we're right on the catalyst being a little bit absent until we kind of move a bit further into Q1, I'm not so nervous about the structural issues around liquidity.
What do you think about fiscal help from governments? I mean, it looks like with Japan and with Germany kind of showing little signs it's ready to budge, it looks like we could start to see that. Is that going to be a real tailwind for markets?
I would say this is one of the biggest potential positive wild cards for risky markets next year. If you got preemptive fiscal easing from the large economies, so this is your area, stroke Germany and China, then you could be bearish on rates even without the central banks tightening. You could be more bullish on equities, thinking there's more than 10% upside. Everything I'm hearing from these different finance ministries still sounds very reactive, and I think the Japanese example is a great sort of template for this, where the number sounds large, and it's as big as the spending package in 2016, but it's essentially a full offset to the fiscal tightening they did by raising the consumption tax a few months ago. So net, there's really nothing going on in Japan that's interesting from a fiscal standpoint. They tightened fiscal policy a couple of months ago through a consumption tax, and now they're loosening it, and that seems to be the story in most economies. It's either coming too late, i.e. when the economy's already in a slump or a near recession, or it's a lot of hand waving that doesn't really net to a lot.
So that then we need to rein back our expectations then if we think fiscal's going to do much. I mean, some guests say, look, there's a lot of green investment needed, and that sounds better to the ears of maybe voters and indeed bond markets, and therefore you can get away with it if you call it green investment.
So I think, and Germany is a good example of that. They announced what they characterized as a stimulus package a few months ago, largely with a green tint to it. But the way this is funded is obviously through higher taxes, so the net impact is kind of a fraction of a percent of GDP. So it may be interesting in a sectoral context if you happen to be exposed to some of those markets that are very geared towards the spending, but in an aggregate sense, it's not really moving the needle on growth. But the UK is kind of the interesting case, because here's an economy where, regardless of the election outcome, you're going to get a net and a decent sized fiscal stimulus. It's either moderately large under the Conservatives or it's really large under Labour. And since that would be happening without the economy actually being in a recession, it could give you more of a lift on growth than people are anticipating. Maybe that's a reason to be slightly more bearish on the bonds and bullish on the currency.
And the pound, do you think, stays around 130?
I think it's going to have a couple percent upside if you get the Tory victory confirmed, because I do think there's going to be a bit of focus on what the fiscal program could mean for growth and equity-related inflows. And even though there is still this cliff edge uncertainty by the end of the transition period in 2020, maybe Johnson ends up being pragmatic and he asks for the extension, and the UK kind of goes the path of agreeing something eventually with the EU on free trade. So I think the first move is going to be up in sterling, although I think, given how much short covering's already occurred, it's probably a couple percent.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how quickly the market narrative moves from the results that we see Thursday night, Friday morning, on to what happens next with Brexit. Where do the US, European trade deals come from, go to, how long do they take, and what does that mean at the end of 2020? John, thanks so much for joining us. John Norman's head of cross-asset fundamental strategy at JP Morgan Chase.
All right, coming up next, if you're listening on Sirius XM, channel 119, you'll hear Daybreak out of New York. If you're listening on London, DAB, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Francine Lacroix. This is Bloomberg.
As Ben Franklin... Just because you travel doesn't mean you can't keep your routine. The more obstacles travel puts between us and our well-being,
the more we strive to work well. At Westin Hotels and Resorts, we're focused on empowering your well-being. With Westin Meetings, you work and feel your best with nutritious snacks and nourishing smoothies that give you the energy you need to power through any meeting. Don't leave your well-being behind. We give you the choice to get up or to rise. Search Westin online to find out more. Westin, let's rise.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited. Like for reals. None of this, we're so unlimited, but you can't watch your fave Christmas film endlessly, or dead scroll inspo for tree decorations until 4 in the morning. We wouldn't do that to you.
We have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Ho, ho, ho.
Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data.
Did you know BT's business broadband comes with an always connected guarantee?
Always connected? I can't guarantee that. Nobody can.
BT can.
No, it's impossible. What if a squirrel bites through your cable?
That's when the 4G backup kicks in.
4G backup?
Yup.
Well, squirrels can't bite through 4G.
Exactly.
BT Business Broadband with the always connected, squirrel-proof guarantee. BT, beyond limits. Subject to availability. T's and C's apply.
Financial capital of the world. 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Monday, December 9th, 2019. Coming up this hour.
The trade war takes its toll on China as exports to the U.S. tumble more than 20%.
A new ominous report points to prolonged turmoil in the U.S. repo market.
Get ready for a busy week with the U.K. election, big central bank decisions, and a deadline for ramped-up tariffs on China.
The House impeachment case against President Trump goes to closing arguments today. I'm John Tucker. That story straight ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. The Jets pulled out a 1-point win over the Dolphins. The Giants play tonight in Philadelphia. Wins for the Nets and the Rangers.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York. Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 106.1 Boston. Bloomberg 960 San Francisco. Sirius XM 119. And around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by Inovalon, a leading provider of cloud-based platforms empowering data-driven healthcare for insurance companies, physicians, pharmacy, and pharmaceutical companies. Inovalon, data has a story to tell. Inovalon gives it a voice.
And U.S. futures are lower to start the week. It is 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down about 3 points. Dow futures down 25. NASDAQ futures down 8. The DAX in Germany is down 0.1%. The CAC in Paris down 0.25%. And the FTSE 100 down 0.2%. Nikkei 225 in Japan gained 0.33%. And the Hang Seng in Hong Kong was little changed. 10-year Treasury up 4/30 seconds, yield 1.82%. Yield on the 2-year, 1.60%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.9% or 55 cents at $58.65 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.1%, up $1.70 to $14.66.90 an ounce. The euro, 1.1065 against the dollar. The yen, 108.50. Nathan.
Karen, we begin with data out of China showing the trade war continuing to bite. China's exports for November fell 1.1%. Exports to the U.S. tumbled 23%. We get more from Bloomberg's Selena Wang in Beijing.
Now, that surprise decline in those trading numbers really highlights the impact of the trade war, especially when you look at trade with the U.S. declining for that 12th consecutive month. But Bloomberg Economics doesn't expect this pressure to let up anytime soon, even if that phase one trade deal is reached, given the weak global demand, especially from China's largest trading partners.
Now, when it comes to that phase one agreement, the clock is ticking, with increased tariffs on Chinese goods set to go into effect just 6 days from now.
Meanwhile, in Hong Kong, the city saw its biggest rally in months on Sunday. Organizers say about 800,000 people hit the streets to support the pro-democracy movement. Bloomberg's Yvonne Mann has more from the streets of Hong Kong.
Largely speaking, this was a very peaceful event. We saw families show up, perhaps knowing that this was a legal event, the first that was approved by police since August. Police themselves were quite restrained. We saw some riot police towards the end of the march, and it was peaceful until nightfall when there were some radical protesters and some tensions with police. But largely speaking, nothing escalated too quickly or too far. But keep in mind, hours before this march, police arrested 11 people, and police say that there was some extreme groups that were trying to attack police. So there were still some nerves leading up to this event as well, but overall pretty tame.
And the large rally signals unrest in Hong Kong will likely continue. Protesters we spoke with vow to keep fighting into the new year when the city holds elections for the Legislative Council.
And when it comes to stocks in Asia, we saw a muted start to the week in the absence of any fresh news on U.S.-China trade talks. Bloomberg's Juliet Sally joins us from Singapore with details. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning, Nathan and Karen. Chinese equities underperformed while both the on and offshore yuan were weaker after disappointing export data released over the weekend. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 rose 1/3% after third quarter GDP beat estimates, rising 1.8% on an annualized basis. Trading in Hong Kong was fairly muted despite yet more protests over the weekend, while Australian and South Korean markets rose by around 1/3%. In Singapore, I'm Juliet Sali, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Julia, thank you. We have a new ominous report from the Bank for International Settlements. It says September's turmoil in the U.S. repo market suggests a structural problem and not a one-time issue. Here with more is Bloomberg Markets reporter Danny Berger.
The BIS saying that the recent wobbles we've seen in the repo market are not a temporary hiccup. They point to a concentration issue. Essentially, there are 4 banks which are vital for the repo market. Those banks have shifted more into treasuries from liquid assets. That means that their ability to provide short-term cash is really limited. And then at the same time, we have hedge funds who increasingly have been using the repo market for that short-term funding. So you really have a mismatch between supply and demand. And I should say this report is very ominous in this month of December when we tend to see the most seasonal illiquidity. And if we get any of that this month, we could see a fire sale.
And there's been high demand for repo cash that the Fed's been offering since September. More than $3 trillion in debt is financed each day in the repo market.
Now, we also have a warning on risk assets in the new year. Allianz Chief Economic Advisor Mohamed El-Arian says volatility is likely to rise in 2020. He spoke with Bloomberg today in Abu Dhabi.
It is a concern that it's not easy to have risk mitigation. I prefer cash because cash gives you one added characteristic, and that is agility. I do believe we're going to enter a period of greater volatility. I think that volatility is going to hit both good fundamental credits and less good fundamental credits, and you want cash to be able to pick up good names at lower prices.
Looking ahead to 2020, Wall Street strategists expect just a 4% gain for the S&P 500. That's the worst outlook in 15 years. Most cite earnings and political uncertainty as reasons for caution.
Before we shift focus to next year, we have a big week ahead for economic data. The Federal Reserve holds its final policy meeting of 2019. Plus, we get readings on inflation and retail sales. Here with more is Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
Fed officials have signaled they're taking a step back after 3 consecutive rate cuts. Wall Street anticipates no change in monetary policy at this week's meeting. Looking ahead, futures trading imply the Fed will be on hold through next year and into 2021. Low inflation allows the Fed to bide its time. This week's data on consumer, producer, and import prices will probably do little to alter the Fed outlook. Also on the calendar, November retail sales providing a glimpse at holiday demand. Bloomberg customers can find a full list of economic indicators by typing EcoGo on their Bloomberg terminal. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Vinny, thank you. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. It's 5:07 on Wall Street, and John Tucker is here with a check of what else is going on around the world. Good morning, John.
And good morning, Nathan. An impeachment hearing scheduled for today on Capitol Hill. Evidence against President Trump will be presented by the House Intelligence and Judiciary Committees. On NBC's Meet the Press, the House Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler said they'll bring articles of impeachment before the committee at some point later in the week.
There is overwhelming evidence, uncontested by the Republicans, that the president put himself above the country, that the president sought foreign assistance in elections, sought to cover it up.
On CNN's State of the Union, Nadler said Trump may try to rig the 2020 vote. On ABC's This Week program, Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida told host George Stephanopoulos the Democrats hurt their case when they keep trying to move the goalpost to fit their narrative.
But what is so dizzying, George, is the evolving standard for impeachment from Democrats.
House investigators today give their closing summations in the Democrats' case against the president. The FBI presumes a Florida attack by a Saudi Air Force officer that left 3 U.S. sailors dead was an act of terrorism. And Republican lawmakers are urging a suspension of training from foreign fighters in the U.S. Ron DeSantis is the governor of Florida.
You know, for us to be bringing in these foreign nationals, you have to take precautions to protect the country.
As criticism mounted about the incident, including President Trump's rapid defense of the Saudi royal family, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman called President Trump on Sunday to express his condolences. And leaders of the House and Senate health committees have announced they have reached a deal on a package of health care legislation, including measures to tackle surprise medical billing. The Democrats and Republicans sent out a statement they'd reached agreement on legislation to end surprise bill, raise the age to buy tobacco products to 21, and extend funding for federal health programs like community health centers. And Carol Spiney, who gave Big Bird his warmth and Oscar the Grouch his growl for nearly 50 years on Sesame Street, died Sunday at the age of 85 at his home in Connecticut. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, John, thank you. It's 5:09 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update with John Stashower.
Nathan, Jets and Dolphins at MetLife, two teams not exactly going anywhere, but it was a game the Jets desperately wanted. To avoid the embarrassment of losing twice to the Dolphins, their coach Adam Gase certainly didn't want to lose twice to the team that fired him a year ago. Jets led most of the way, fell behind with a minute and a half to go, then won at 22-21 on a last-second Sam Ficken field goal. The game-winning drive included a 38-yard completion on the first play. Then Sam Darnold got sacked, and then a play where pass interference was not called, but then was called after video review. The recap from Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I think for us it was just really good for Vincent, first of all, to make that play for us. It was huge. It was a really good drive, and then I shouldn't be taking sacks in 2 minutes, especially when we don't have timeouts, so that was bad by me. But our guys, like they did all game, they were resilient, and we just kept pushing and found Ty there for the check down. And Sam obviously did a great job kicking the ball.
Elsewhere, Kansas City won at New England 23-16. So the Patriots have lost 3 losses to the other AFC first-place teams. 9th straight win for Baltimore, 24-17 at Buffalo. Game of the day, if not the season. San Francisco won at New Orleans. Battle of NFC first-place teams, 48-46. Last night, the Rams took Seattle 28-12. Tonight in Philadelphia, Giants try to end an 8-game losing streak. All eyes on Eli Manning, back in the job he had for 16 years as the Giants starting quarterback. Impressive win for the Rangers, kicking off a West Coast trip 5-0 at Vegas. The Nets beat the Nuggets 105-102. For the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
And John, former Yankee greats Thurman Munson and Don Mattingly failed to win election to the Baseball Hall of Fame again. Instead, the Modern Era Committee chose former St. Louis Cardinals catcher Ted Simmons and Marvin Miller. Miller was the union leader who revolutionized baseball by empowering players to be free agents. S&P futures are lower by 3.5 points right now. Dow futures down 28. NASDAQ futures lower by 10 points. Those are losses of 0.1% across the board. 10 years up, 430 seconds, yield 1.82%. 2-year Treasury yield 1.60%. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing. You. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us number 1 in client support, number 1 in firm leadership, number 1 in operational support, number 1 in compensation, number 1 in professional development support, and number 1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com. And feel the power. Member FINRA a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can feel your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery is running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We hunt in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
Today, your information is more exposed than ever. When you shop, sign in, or browse, you could be vulnerable to cybercriminals. More online threats demand more protection. That's why new Norton 360 provides multiple layers of protection, combining device security, secure VPN, password manager, and cloud backup all in one solution. Get new Norton 360, starting at $24.99 for the first year.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Everybody needs somebody.
At Amazon, find everything you need to make the kids smile this Christmas. You can get items like the LOL Surprise 2-in-1 Blamper, Monopoly with electronic voice banking, and the Barbie 3-story townhouse. All with low prices and free UK delivery on eligible orders over £20. So there'll be more, and more.
Wow, thanks, Mum and Dad.
Amazon, delivering all you need for the kids for less.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Paul Allen.
One of the world's largest sporting retailers has just opened a 5th store in Australia and is planning to expand across the country and beyond. Joining us now, we have Decathlon Australia CEO Olivier Robinet. 5 stores in Australia now. You obviously see some potential in this market.
Yeah, sure. Aussies are the most sporty people of the world. So for Decathlon, it's a huge opportunity.
Retail spending in Australia is down. There's evidence that the tax cuts, rate cuts are not being spent. People are opting to save. Is that your experience? Have you noticed a downturn in retail spending?
It's not easy, but I think it's an opportunity for Decathlon, you know. Here, Aussies are really sporty, but sporting goods are really expensive. And our aim is to make sports more accessible to more Aussies. So Decathlon work a lot on just to innovate. And just have an example, for example, of this mask designed by our teammates. And this is a very innovative mask, as you can breathe underwater by your nose and just breathe relax with a 180 degrees view. So millions of people in the world went under the water thanks to Decathlon and to this mask. And perhaps we should have used it last week in Sydney.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European stocks are edging lower with U.S. stock index futures as investors look ahead to a week brimming with potential catalysts from central bank meetings to a looming U.S.-China tariff deadline. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 2 points, Dow futures down 18, NASDAQ futures down 7. The DAX in Germany is little change. 10-year Treasury up 4/30 seconds, yield 1.82%. Yield on the 2-year 1.60%. Non-Mex crude oil down 0.9% or 51 cents at 58.69 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.1%, up $1.60 to 14.6670 an ounce. The euro 1.1063 against the dollar. The yen 108.52. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's John Tucker with more on what's going on around the world. John, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. House investigators give their closing summations today on the Democrats' case against President Donald Trump. The FBI presumes a Florida attack by a Saudi Air Force officer that left 3 U.S. sailors dead was an act of terrorism. And hundreds of thousands of protesters marched through Hong Kong to mark Human Rights Day and pressed for greater democracy in the city in the biggest rally in about 6 months. Sports, the Jets and 49ers and Ravens all win. Patriots and Redskins lose. The Giants and Eli Manning play the Eagles tonight. In hockey, the Rangers shut out Vegas. And in basketball, the Nets win and the Wizards lose. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, John, thanks. It's 5:19 on Wall Street and live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak, getting set for a busy week ahead for traders. We're joined now by Steve Cheverone, portfolio manager at Federated Global Investment Management. Good to have you with us this morning, Steve, as we're seeing a little bit of a pullback in the equity markets after Friday's blowout jobs report. Do you see any more upside for this market?
I absolutely think you can. I mean, I think, investors are going to enter this week with some caution, right? I mean, you know that we have the trade, or the U.S.-China trade negotiation deadline, if you will, on the 15th. At the end of the week, you've got the U.K. election on Thursday. I think, folks are going to be a little bit cautious ahead of those, but the base case scenario for both of those things are pretty good. If the conservatives do, in fact, get a majority on Thursday, that probably provides some certainty around Brexit. That's probably a good thing. And if we're to believe what we're told every few minutes from the administration, that we may get some pushback of the tariffs before week's end. And I think both of those, if you put those off the table, can push markets higher.
I want to get to those in a moment, but the one catalyst you didn't mention that comes before the UK election and the potential imposition of those tariffs is the Federal Reserve meeting on Wednesday. Do you see that as a potential catalyst as well?
It shouldn't be. I mean, this should be a kind of quiet mail-it-in meeting. I think Powell has really done something special in the back half of this year, in that he delivered just enough stimulus to the market to calm recession fears, while also convincing participants that we don't need more. And so I think the market is relatively comfortable with the idea that there's a high bar on either side for any further action. So, this should be, at least in terms of kind of any action, a pretty quiet meeting.
Do you see any cause for concern about possible recession? I mean, it wasn't too long ago, just a few months ago, that those fears were pretty heightened.
We have our own, what we call the Federated Recession Dashboard, which is a series of indicators that we monitor. And they never were pointing in the direction of an imminent recession, and they still don't. We've always thought that a recession was more of a kind of first half or even early second half of 2021 event, based on how things like claims and core PCE and housing starts, and even the yield curve and spreads, and even ISM for that matter, have been pointing. So, that was really the play that we made this year, was that while folks in the marketplace seemed to be concerned about recession, we just didn't see it coming, and that kept us long and overweight equities the entire year. We thought those concerns were overblown.
So you think that concern is overblown even if there is the imposition of tariffs this coming Sunday? Does that change the possibility of recession if those tariffs are put in place as scheduled?
I mean, look, all other things being equal, tariffs are not positive for growth. I mean, I think that's clear. But when you measure that against a consumer, a domestic consumer, 70% of the U.S. economy, that's adding 100. I mean, look, let's forget about the 260 plus thousand we added Friday. In any event, we know that we're adding jobs at a clip of over 150,000 a month. We have wage gains greater than mortgage rates for the first time since Nixon. We are just not enough of a trade. We are not enough of a manufacturing and trading economy, unlike China or Germany, where the tariffs in and of themselves are enough to push us in a recession. And that's really been the lesson of the last year. You could get overly concerned about some of the trade stuff, not understanding that there's offsets in currency, and not understanding that the underlying consumer still remains remarkably strong. And so, is it positive if those tariffs go up? Absolutely not. It's going to hurt earnings estimates. Is it likely to plunge us in a recession? We don't think so.
Got less than a minute left here. Want to get your outlook for 2020, particularly with the U.S.-China trade story being unresolved right now.
Yeah, I mean, our view is that we've got a 3,500 number for next year. Look, could you see a little pullback from the really strong run that we've had? Yeah, I think you could see something in the first quarter that was a little bit of a give back, but ultimately we think markets are going to march higher. If there's no recession, the bull market should not be over. Earnings are going to grow, we think, at a little bit better clip next year than this year, and we think the PE still has room to expand with interest rates being as low as they are. So trade issues notwithstanding, we expect the bull market to continue in 2020.
Always good to get your insights, Steve. Thanks for being with us this morning. Steve Chevron, Portfolio Manager at Federated Global Investment Management. As we get this week started, futures are pointing to a modestly lower open on Wall Street. Little change to the downside right now, with S&P futures lower by nearly 2 points. Dow futures down 11, and NASDAQ futures a loss of 5 points. The 10-year is up 5/30 seconds, yield 1.81% on a 10-year Treasury note. The 2 years at 1.60%. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. T-Mobile heads to federal court today in Manhattan to defend its planned acquisition of Sprint against an effort by several states to block it. The states say the $26.5 billion deal will mean higher prices for consumers. We're paying more for both new and used cars than we were around this time last year. Experian says that recent data shows the average new vehicle loan is up by 5% to almost $32,500. Used car loans are up 3% to almost $21,000. Buyers are opting for bigger vehicles, but they're also paying up for high-tech features like voice-activated entertainment systems and driver assist technology. This week, investors will key in on any progress toward a U.S.-China trade deal with the tariff deadline approaching. They'll also turn their attention toward the Fed's final interest rate setting meeting of the year and Chair Jay Powell's press conference afterward on Wednesday. Stock futures slightly lower this morning. Dow futures down 24. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/Cs.
Where would we be without you? The butchers, the bakers, the digital future makers. From BLTs to MOTs, you're the companies that keep us all going. So mind your business, London. And so will we, with our £14 billion lending fund to help small businesses. Because deal or no deal, from Downing Street to the High Street, every business is part of something far, far bigger. Find out how HSBC could help you at business.hsbc.uk/mindyourbusiness. All lending subject to status.
This year, make Christmas shopping a pleasure. Come to Bicester Village with
Over 160 beautiful boutiques set in a fairy tale Cotswolds Christmas garden, glittering by day and magically illuminated by night. After a day's hard work finding the perfect gifts, reward yourself with festive menus and cocktails at Farm Shop Restaurant and Cafe by Soho House & Co. or a delicious dinner at Cafe Wolseley, Bicester Village. The perfect place for Christmas shopping.
Coffee shop, cashback, cat flaps, cashback, beanbags, rucksack, hire car, buy a car, flapjack, cashback, dumbbells, cashback, takeaway, holiday to anywhere the sun is at, bum bag, laptop, big match, hatchback, binge watching, paintballing, crab fishing, cashback, anything you want to buy, everywhere you want to go. Guess what? Cashback. Whatever you spend your money on, get money back every time with the American Express Platinum Cashback Everyday Credit Card. Search Amex Cashback. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Minimum annual spend to receive cashback. Terms apply. 18 plus subject to approval.
We can deck the halls, the lounge, the bedrooms, the whole house.
Want to get your grotto glittering? Get to B&Q. We have 20% off all indoor and outdoor Christmas lights, artificial trees, decorations, and more. Bring the magic home with B&Q. Offer ends 10th of December. Subject to availability. See DIY.com.
What better way to celebrate the holidays than with a subscription to TuneIn Premium? With a bottomless library of the world's best audio, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Search Premium to upgrade today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York, Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston, Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco, Bloomberg 960 to the country, Sirius XM Channel 119, and around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 5:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 4 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. Stocks are a little changed to kick off the trading week, a week in which sees policy decisions from the Fed and ECB, an election in the U.K., and a U.S.-China tariff deadline. Meanwhile, the trade war is hurting China at a time when global demand is already weak. Bloomberg Daybreak Asia anchor Brian Curtis has details from Hong Kong.
Total exports in November dropped 1.1% from a year ago. Shipments to the United States plunged 23%. It was the worst result for exports to America since February and the 12th straight monthly decline. Overall, shipments had been expected to rise 0.8% ahead of Christmas. These 18 months of tit-for-tat tariffs have damaged both economies. Chinese companies and American farmers are selling less to the other side. In Hong Kong, Brian Curtis, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Brian, thanks. Meanwhile, car sales in China continued to decline in November. Vehicle sales fell 4.2% from a year earlier. That makes 17 declines in the past 18 months and all but ensures a second annual drop for the world's second biggest market.
In Japan, the economy expanded in the third quarter at a much faster pace than initially reported. Japanese GDP rose at an annual rate of 1.8% compared to an initial estimate of just 0.2%.
We have a new ominous report from the Bank for International Settlements. It says September's turmoil in the U.S. repo market suggests a structural problem and not just a temporary hiccup. Here with more on that is Bloomberg's Denise Pellegrini.
The BIS says big banks and hedge funds are responsible for the September disruption, and it says the big four U.S. banks most active in the market hold more liquid assets in treasuries now relative to what they park at the Fed, and that makes them, the BIS says, less nimble than they used to be. On top of that, the BIS says hedge funds are increasingly using the repo market to finance investments, putting additional strain on liquidity. Denise Pellegrini, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Denise, thank you. And in deal news, French pharma giant Sanofi has agreed to buy Synthorx for $2.5 billion. That's almost triple the California biotech company's market value. S&P futures are a little changed to lower this morning, down about 2 points now. Dow futures down 16. NASDAQ futures down 6. The DAX in Germany is little change. 10-year Treasury up 6/32, yield 1.81%. Yield on the 2-year 1.60%. NYMEX crude oil is down 1% or 59 cents at $58.62 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.2% or $2.50 at $14.6760 an ounce. The British pound is at 1.3162 against the dollar. And straight ahead, we have the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
All right, thanks, Karen. It is 5:33 on Wall Street, and John Tucker is back with a check of what else is going on around the world. John.
And Nathan, House investigators give their closing summations today in the Democrats' case against President Trump. They're debating how far they want to go in drafting articles of impeachment. Judiciary Chairman Gerald Nadler said Sunday his panel is on track to decide what charges will be brought against the president.
There'll be a lot of consultations, I assume, between members of the committee, with the House leadership, with members of the House, and we'll have to make those decisions. So we'll bring articles of impeachment, presumably before the committee at some point later in the week.
This will set up an historic vote on impeachment in the full House before Congress leaves for a scheduled holiday break on December 20th. Even as he faces impeachment over Ukraine, federal lawsuits claiming that President Trump has unconstitutionally enriched himself continue to dog him. Now, 2 of the suits have reached a critical juncture. A pair of U.S. appeals courts this week will consider whether to let the 2 emoluments cases go forward. France is facing a fresh week of protest as the government there and labor unions stick to their guns over President Macron's pension system reform. Details in this report from Bloomberg's James Regan in Paris.
Transport and other public sector workers continue to strike in protest at President Emmanuel Macron's plans to overhaul the French pension system. A second major day of demonstrations is planned across the country on Tuesday, with polls showing the movement still has majority support among French people. Prime Minister Edouard Philippe is expected to lay out the details of the government's proposals on Wednesday this week. In Paris, James Regan, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson goes into the final days of the UK's election campaign, returning to his key message that only he can deliver Brexit. Polls show his Conservative Party on course to win a majority, which would mean Parliament voting to leave the European Union by January 31st. But in the 2017 election, those polls were wrong, and Johnson will urge supporters not to be complacent. Elizabeth Warren on Sunday says she made about $1.9 million working as a bankruptcy lawyer over 3 decades, a disclosure that comes after requests from the media and Buttigieg for her to release her tax returns. The documents released Sunday cover her compensation between 1985 and 2009, but don't include tax returns. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thanks, John. 5:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John's Stash Hour.
Nathan, Jets and Dolphins at MetLife, a game with a whole lot of field goals. Miami kicked 7. The Jets kicked 3, including 1 right at the end.
Out of the hold of Edwards. Clean spot. Kick on the way. It is good! Inside the right upright for Sam Fickett. And on the last play of the game, the Jets pull it out. They win it over Miami 22-21.
ESPN New York, the calls. The Jets make it 4 wins in their last 5 games. They avoid a second loss to the last place Dolphins. What a game in New Orleans. San Francisco on a last-second field goal won 48-46. And the Niners got help last night. Seattle lost to the Rams 28-12. Niners grab a 1-game division lead. Baltimore sits atop the AFC 24-17 at Buffalo. The Ravens' 9th straight win. New England right now does not look like a team ready to win another Super Bowl. They were beaten at home by Kansas City 23-16. The Patriots' 21-game home win streak comes to an end. Tonight in Philadelphia, the return of Eli Manning. Hasn't played since week 2, but Daniel Jones has an injured ankle. Giants coach Pat Shurmur asked if Eli will be rusty.
We're going to go play and be aggressive about it and, give him the things that he can do well. Why is rust not a concern? Yeah. What are we going to do about it? Why worry about things that you can't do anything about? I anticipate and expect that he's going to be ready to play.
Giants have lost 8 in a row. Big game for the Eagles. They'll be tied for first with a win. Rangers won 5-0 in Vegas. The Nets beat Denver 105-102. Former Cardinals and Brewers catcher Ted Simmons and the late Union leader Marvin Miller both voted for induction to the Baseball Hall of Fame. The Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. I'm John Stashower. Nathan?
Thanks, John. 5:37 on Wall Street. The latest edition of Bloomberg Business Week is on newsstands now. It's the Bloomberg 50, the 50 people who defined global business in 2019. Brett Began helped compile the list for Bloomberg Business Week.
There are a lot of people you look at and say, hey, this person, of course, is going to be on the list. And every year, I think, oh, this person's definitely going to be on the list. And then we get to the end and they wind up not on it.
Read who is on the list and other stories in this week's edition of Bloomberg Business Week on newsstands now and online at businessweek.com. Terminal customers can receive a complimentary subscription at MAG Go and listen to Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly weekdays at 2 p.m. Wall Street time here on Bloomberg Radio. 5:38 on Wall Street time now for the Tri-State Business Report. Here's Bloomberg's Ed Corey. Good morning, Ed.
Nathan, Amazon has signed a lease for 335,000 square feet in Midtown Manhattan. Less than a year after walking away from a planned second headquarters in New York, the new Hudson Yards office will accommodate more than 1,500 workers. It's supposed to open in 2021. Iberdrola plans to build an offshore wind farm off the coast of Connecticut sometime in the middle of the next decade. The Spanish utilities Avangrid unit won an auction to develop it with Copenhagen infrastructure partners. They plan to use a turbine of at least 14 megawatts. That's bigger than anything now available. SJI's Marina Energy will sell its Marina thermal facility to DTE Energy Services for $100 million. CityBiz List reports the Atlantic City plant is an 8-megawatt power generation facility. It provides electricity and hot and chilled water to both Borgata Hotel Casino and Spa and the Water Club. That's your Bloomberg Tri-State Business Report. I'm Ed Corey. Nathan?
All right, Ed, thank you. It's 5:39 on Wall Street. Bloomberg Radio is on the air from San Francisco to New York, London to Hong Kong. Let's check in with our global news team for some of the top stories heard on our 300 affiliate radio stations around the world.
I'm Gina Cervetti, and on WBBM in Chicago, I'm reporting that Airbus shares are poised to finish the year ahead of Boeing for the first time since 2015.
I'm Steve Potosk, and on KNX in Los Angeles, we're talking about France's Sanofi buying California-based biotech Synthorix for $2.5 billion.
I'm Courtney Donahoe on WHAS in Louisville. The average car loan has hit a record in the third quarter on higher vehicle prices.
I'm Ed Corey on WWJ in Detroit. I'm reporting a $1 billion grudge drove General Motors' lawsuit against Fiat Chrysler.
And those are some of the stories our 2,700 Bloomberg journalists and analysts are working on this morning around the world. Another item we're watching, a smattering of earnings on the way. We get results from 5 companies in the S&P 500 this week. They include Broadcom, Oracle, and Costco. Bloomberg customers can check the full earnings calendar on the terminal by typing ACDR Go. S&P futures are lower by 2 points now. Dow futures down 18. NASDAQ futures a loss of 5.5 points. The 10-year Treasury up 5/32, yield 1.81%. 2-year Treasury yield 1.60%. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's environment of market volatility, Pershing's Prime Services is well positioned to support the needs of hedge funds and other alternative investment managers. Whether it's customized financing or securities lending solutions, platform access, or business expansion, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and agile enough to meet your evolving demands. Pershing helps to solve the needs of clients by advocating for them, providing unwavering strength, deep supply, and award-winning service that is at the core of everything we do. Find out what sets Pershing's prime brokerage team apart.
Learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers offered by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Visit our website at Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
This is your... 'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can feel your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery is running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We heart in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Sometimes in business, you have to take risks, but trading across borders and currencies shouldn't be one of them. With Western Union Business Solutions, we can help you manage the risk of doing business internationally. Our valuable experience, expert knowledge, and extensive global network makes us the ideal trusted partner for your business. And with our customer-focused support team, you'll receive a dedicated solution and personalized service. Visit westernunionbusiness.com. Western Union Business Solutions, a global financial network you can trust.
Coffee shop, cashback, cat flaps, cashback, beanbags, rucksack, hire car, buy a car, flapjack, cashback, dumbbells, cashback, takeaway, holiday to anywhere the sun is at, bum bag, laptop, big match, hatchback, binge watching, paintballing, crab fishing, cashback, anything you want to buy, everywhere you want to go. Guess what? Cashback. Whatever you spend your money on, get money back every time with the American Express Platinum Cashback Everyday Credit Card. Search Amex Cashback. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Minimum annual spend to receive cashback. Terms apply. 18 plus subject to approval.
What better way to celebrate the holidays than with a subscription to TuneIn Premium? With a bottomless library of the world's best audio, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
The House Judiciary Committee convenes today to review investigative findings against President Trump.
It's an opportunity for both the Intelligence Committee's counsel and the Judiciary Committee's counsel to lay out the case. You can expect specifically for the Intelligence Committee's counsel to lay out the evidence in that 300-page report that the House Intelligence Committee revealed last week.
There's Lauren Fox. A forthcoming Justice Department Inspector General report is due to reveal that the FBI did have a legitimate basis to open investigation into ties between the Trump campaign and Russia. North Korea's Kim Jong-un has set a year-end deadline for Washington to change its stance in negotiations. North Korea's ambassador to the UN says denuclearization is now off the table. More than 20 people are thought to be missing on White Island after a deadly volcanic eruption. At least 5 people were killed. I'm John Trout.
Message and data rates may apply. If there were a top-ranked business degree that gave you access to world-renowned faculty, leaders, and more, but on your schedule, the W. Harry School.
Why all the top-tier experts? Because business is not a magic trick.
Give us a sense of the economic backdrop.
Bloomberg Markets.
Which financial records are these?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. European stocks are drifting. U.S. stock index futures are as well as investors look ahead to a week brimming with potential catalysts from central bank meetings to a looming U.S.-China tariff deadline. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures down 2 points. Dow futures down 17. NASDAQ futures down 7. The DAX in Germany, little change, down less than 0.1%. 10-year Treasury up 6/32, yield 1.81%. Yield on the 2-year 1.60%. NYMEX crude oil is down 1.1% or 64 cents at $58.56 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.2% or $2.70 at $14.6780 an ounce. The euro 1.1068 against the dollar. British pound 1.3165 and the yen at 108.47. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's John Tucker with more on what's going on around the world. John.
And good morning, Karen. Pushing ahead with articles of impeachment, the House Judiciary Committee convenes today to formally receive the investigative findings against President Trump. Alabama's near-total abortion ban will remain blocked by a federal judge. The Attorney General's office there confirmed the state is not appealing the October injunction. A New England volcanic island has erupted in a tower of ash and steam while dozens of tourists were exploring the moon-like surface, killing 5 people and leaving many more missing. In sports, the Jets, 49ers, and Ravens win. The Patriots and Redskins lose. The Giants and Eli Manning play the Eagles tonight. In hockey, the Rangers shut out Vegas. And in basketball, the Nets win and the Wizards lose. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg Opinion, informed perspectives, and expert data-driven commentary on breaking news.
We're coming up to 5:49 on Wall Street. Time to check in with Bloomberg Opinion. Columnist Marcus Ashworth joins us from our London bureau to take a look at some of the big events coming up this week. And Marcus, one of the big ones is on your side of the pond, the election on Thursday. And if you take a look at the currency markets, it seems like traders are thinking this is Boris Johnson's to lose.
There's an election? My word, I didn't know.
Who knew, right?
Who knew? Yeah, it's been taking a bit of our time up here. Look, it's a slam dunk for the existing Prime Minister. I think he's going to be in with a sizable majority. And to be quite frank, the opposition has been so poor that if he doesn't, then we really are in problems, because everything that could have gone right for them, the leading Conservative Party has done. And I think in that sense, you should expect, all things being equal, it's looking pretty nailed on now, a sizable Conservative majority, which should therefore lead to the Brexit bill being passed before Christmas. And then in turn, the formalities done by the end of January, which then leads into another whole year of stramash over the trade deal with the European Union. But at least I think it looks pretty certain at this point. Unless tactical voting miraculously comes out of somewhere and the turnout is the highest it's ever been by several factors due to the youth vote. But I think both those things are clutching at straws, I'm afraid. Okay, well, it has to be said, though, that the polling in the UK has been known to get it wrong before. But you're thinking that there's just too many stars aligning for the Conservatives to lose it at this point? It's just everything, all the anecdotal evidence, the whole raft of polls. It depends how much you want to look into these things. But, I mean, pretty much the trend has been consistent. There's been around a 10-point average lead. Some signs it's going to be quite a bit bigger than that. And lots of other reasons why you can see things falling away for the opposition parties, which doesn't bode well for them, and in turn just means that the Conservatives will benefit. All right, well, your 6 to 8 weeks of campaigning are nearly over in the UK. We've been doing this for about 2 years in the US as far as the presidential election. But be that as it may, I want to move on to the other potential catalyst for markets coming up this weekend. Of course, we've been counting down for months, even longer than the UK election, toward the possibility of a resolution between the US and China. Now we have this other tariff deadline coming up on Sunday. Yeah, I mean, soybeans seem to be the thing what it's all about. Obviously, that's, I think, part of the real reason behind the Argentina and Brazil steel tariffs. So, look, this is an ongoing game of cat and mouse between, who needs it most. Was it China? Can they hold on? Or does the US have a leverage over them? And Trump, when does he need to get aggressive on these things? So, I think the markets are a little numb to this now. And certainly going into sort of year end, this is really the last week of action, and I think most positions will be paired anyway. And especially with this tariffs and stuff coming out, it makes little incentive to go into the next weekend with any form of aggressive position. So I think in that sense we expect a fairly benign reaction because I think it's just less liquidity, unless there's something really shocking. But I think the slowly, steadily is going to get done. Whether it's this time and tariffs come up, who knows? But I mean, I think it makes sense for both sides to get it done. It's the question of the timing and what they can extract on the sidelines. And obviously, as you know, this is only really a stage one thing anyway. So,
all right. In our last minute here, we also have central banks acting or potentially not acting this week. Although for the European Central Bank, this will be the first decision under Christine Lagarde.
Yeah, we'll get Turkey probably cutting by at least 100 basis points. We'll get Russia cutting probably again by 25. And the ECB will get absolutely nothing. Why? It's her first ever meeting, and she's announced a great big review, which means that hopefully she won't have to do anything for the next 3 months at least. So it's looking at inflation target. It's looking at a whole raft of things, how it's worked. The recent sort of move they did in September, which they put QE back in again, cut rates, and then tiered deposit rates, which actually had a reverse effect. They've actually pushed rates up. There's a clash between the sort of Teutonic, German, Dutch, Finnish, Austrian central banks who don't want any weakening, and then a push from Italy's and the France's who want a little bit more flexibility. This is the usual story. Lagarde's taking over. She's maybe making lots of nice noises on fiscal, but nothing's going to happen on monetary for quite some while.
Bloomberg Opinion columnist Marcus Ashworth. Thanks as always. Read more from Bloomberg Opinion at Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN. Go on the terminal. Karen?
All right, thanks, Nathan. It is 5:54 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Law Report. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
Almost half of the members of the Senate Democratic Caucus, including multiple members of the Senate Finance Committee, have signed on to a letter supporting the expansion of green energy tax incentives. A second set of final rules for the Opportunity Zones incentive established in the 2017 tax law is under review by the White House Regulatory Affairs Office. And a judge in Albany upheld a New York state law that requires most children to have certain vaccinations before they can attend school or daycare. The law was challenged by parents who have religious objections to vaccines.
Bloomberg Law. Everything you need, all on one legal research platform, including guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And now another legal story we're watching. U.S. regulators broadening their scrutiny of Amazon to include its massive cloud computing business. Sources tell us investigators at the Federal Trade Commission have been asking about practices around Amazon's cloud unit known as Amazon Web Services. For more on the implications, June Grasso speaks with Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Litigation Analyst Jennifer Rhee.
What are the antitrust issues the FTC might specifically be looking at here, and what might the investigators be asking software companies?
Well, the software companies are a bigger group of smaller players that create the software and applications that run on top of this infrastructure. So they are in this position, much like some of the sellers on Amazon's retail site, that they are a customer of Amazon's, but they're also a competitor of Amazon because Amazon also competes for some of those applications and software that run on top of the infrastructure. And so the question becomes, is Amazon doing anything that's harming them? Let's say by tying entities that use its infrastructure, buy its infrastructure services, I guess is the way to say it, and also forcing some of them to buy its software where it has more competition. You know, if somebody needs Amazon's infrastructure because they don't have many other options or don't like the other options, so they're dependent on Amazon, and then Amazon requires them also to buy the software, the applications, it could push out some of these smaller software applications applications makers that don't also have that infrastructure piece. So they could be asking the software vendors about that kind of conduct by Amazon and whether they're affected by it.
Does that echo in any respect the issues that the FTC is looking into in Amazon's retail business?
You know, it's very similar. It's kind of like issues that can arise when a company is vertically integrated. When they're vertically integrated, they are competing with companies that are also their customers. And it's the same way on the retail website, where Amazon hosts these customers, these entities that sell on Amazon's website, but it also competes against them by selling its own products. And whenever a company is in that position, and in one of those pieces, whether it be, where they're competing or where they are actually servicing, they have some market dominance and they're needed by these entities. They could leverage that. And that's the concern sometimes in antitrust when they're looking at a vertically integrated company that is doing business with other companies that aren't vertically integrated in that same manner.
All right, and that's Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Litigation Analyst Jennifer Rees speaking with June Grasso. Catch more of that interview plus analysis of the latest legal news by subscribing to the Bloomberg Law Podcast or downloading this show at Bloomberg.com/podcast. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. Futures this morning, little change to lower. S&P futures down a point, Dow futures down 8, NASDAQ futures down 4, and Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited. Like for reals. None of this, we're so unlimited, but you can't watch your fave Christmas film endlessly. Or dead scroll inspo for tree decorations until 4 in the morning. We wouldn't do that to you.
We have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Ho, ho, ho.
Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data.
Forget the cheese, basket, and socks this holiday season and get the ones you love and even the ones you just kind of like. A subscription to TuneIn Premium. With TuneIn Premium, you'll be giving them the gift they can enjoy all year long. Featuring live NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB games, commercial-free music, and even podcasts. TuneIn Premium brings the best in audio to you. This year, we're making Santa's job a whole lot easier. So forget the stocking. Stuff their phone with TuneIn Premium. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen and favorite ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Monday, December 9th, 2019. Coming up this hour.
The trade war takes its toll on China as exports to the U.S. tumbled more than 20%.
A new ominous report points to prolonged turmoil in the U.S. repo market.
Get ready for a busy week with the U.K. election, big central bank decisions, and a deadline for ramped-up tariffs on China.
The House impeachment case against President Trump goes to closing arguments today. I'm John Tucker. That story straight ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. The Jets pulled out a 1-point win over the Dolphins. The Giants play tonight in Philadelphia. Wins for the Nets and the Rangers.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York. Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 106.1 Boston. Bloomberg 960 San Francisco. Sirius XM 119. And around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. futures, little change to start the week. We're coming up to 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down a point. Dow futures down 9. NASDAQ futures down 5. The DAX in Germany is down less than 0.1%. The FTSE 100 is down 0.1%, and the CAC in Paris is down 0.25%. Nikkei 225 in Japan gained 0.33%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong was little changed. 10-year Treasury up 5/30 seconds, yield 1.81%. Yield on the 2-year, 1.60%. NYMEX crude oil is down 1% or 56 cents at 58.65 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.2% or $2.60 at 14.6760 an ounce. The euro 1.1070 against the dollar, and the yen 108.47. Nathan.
Karen, we begin with data out of China showing the trade war continues to bite. China's